Chapter 261, A Short Visit to Lant. Inside the flying carriage, Wendy was seated on William's right, while Brianna was seated on his left. The little loli was looking starry-eyed at the scenery that she was seeing for the first time. After tying up the loose ends, William and his group, along with Sir Jerkin's entourage, left the Kirinter Mountains. The two flying carriages flew side by side as they made their way back towards the Helan Kingdom. "Don't poke your head out too much, Brianna," William said helplessly. "You might fall out of the carriage window if you lean more than that." "It's fine," Brianna replied while still gazing at the scenery under the flying carriage. "Big brother is holding my waist, I'm not going anywhere." "You're so troublesome." William sighed and the little loli just giggled in acknowledgement of his claims. The half-elf then shifted his attention to the beautiful lady with light purple hair and eyes that was seated in front of him. Ayla, the second princess of the Zealand dynasty, was also looking outside the carriage window. She had stayed in that pose ever since the flying carriage took off in the air. William wondered what her fate would have been if her marriage to Connell hadn't been interrupted. As if sensing his gaze, Princess Ayla turned her head to the side to look back at him. "Is there something on my face, Lord William?" Ayla asked. "No," William replied. "I'm still not sure what Prince Alaric was thinking when he asked me to take you to see my grandfather. My big brother might seem easygoing on the surface, but he is a worrywart at heart." Princess Ayla closed her eyes as if trying to hold back the sadness in them. "He only wants the best for me, so he decided to ask a favor from you." "I see." William didn't pursue the topic because he felt like Princess Ayla didn't want to continue the discussion. After a few hours, they finally arrived at the town where a teleport gate was stationed. William and Sir Jerkins had talked beforehand about their next course of action before parting ways. The ambassador was to return to the capital to inform the king about the result of their mission. William, on the other hand, would first head to Lant and drop off Princess Ayla before going back to the Royal Academy. To be honest, William was worried that Princess Ayla was a spy sent by the Crown Prince to monitor their movements. He hoped that his grandfather would be able to supervise her and ensure that she didn't do anything stupid while she was staying in the western edges of the Helan Kingdom. 2 days had passed after they had left the Kirinter Mountains. It was around noon when they saw the familiar town of Lant appear before their eyes. Brianna suddenly screamed and grabbed William's arms while pointing outside the window of the carriage. There are wyverns outside!" Brianna exclaimed. "They are heading in our direction." Princess Ayla, who was meditating, suddenly opened her eyes and showed an anxious expression. There had been several wyvern attacks in the Zealand dynasty and the people there were very wary of wyverns. There was an occasion when her entourage was attacked by a wyvern while visiting the towns near their borders. Since then, Princess Ayla had been extra careful about not venturing into the territories where wyverns were said to hunt. "Don't worry," William patted the head of the anxious loli. "They are on our side." "Hey!" Brianna looked back at William in confusion. A few seconds later, the wyverns flew alongside the flying carriage as if they were guards protecting a VIP guest. It took Brianna a minute to realize that the wyverns were indeed not there to harm them. She then poked her head out of the carriage to stare at these notorious beasts that were often called lesser dragons in their domain. Princess Ayla had also calmed down after her initial shock, but she didn't let her guard down. She just stared at the wyverns outside the window with a complicated gaze, as the carriage slowly descended from the sky. Dave guided Lionheart towards the Ainsworth residence and landed 50 meters away from the main entrance. James, Mordred, Anna, Eve, and Helen were already standing in front of the entrance and waited for their guests to disembark from the carriage. "I came to visit," William said with a smile. "It's good to see you again, Grandpa, Uncle, Auntie, Eve, and Aunt Helen." "Will." Eve immediately reached out to her big brother. William chuckled as he hurriedly picked up his adorable cousin and kissed her cheeks. James smiled as he looked at the guests that William had brought along with him. He was already familiar with the others, but there were several new faces that he hadn't seen before, namely Amelia and Princess Ayla, who were both beautiful ladies. The old man laughed as he patted William's shoulder. "You did well, boy. Should I start preparing for a grand wedding ceremony?" Before William could even give a retort to his shameless grandpa's words, Brianna hurriedly ran towards James and grabbed his hand. "Grandpa James, we meet again," Brianna said with a big smile on her face. "Do you remember your promise? You said that you would give me a wyvern the next time we saw each other." "Brianna." James almost didn't recognize the adorable girl that suddenly clung to him. "What are you doing here? Did your old man allow you to leave the mountain? Wait. Don't tell me, you ran away from home and hitched a ride." A mischievous smile appeared on Brianna's face as she gave William a sidelong glance before returning her attention to James. "Grandpa, Big Brother William said that he fell in love with me at first sight," Brianna stated with a face filled with injustice. "He challenged a prince in order to win my hand in marriage. Right now, I am his fiancé." James almost choked on his saliva when he heard Brianna's words. He then stared at William as if he was looking at a scum. "Boy, even though I always tell you to look for girls to marry, I didn't tell you to prey on little girls," James said in a righteous manner as if he was free from sin. "However, since you can't uncook cooked rice, I will turn a blind eye on this matter. Just make sure that you treat Brianna well in the future." William snorted and raised his hand to flick the loli's forehead. Unfortunately for him, Brianna had already anticipated his reaction and backed away while giggling. She then stuck out her tongue at William, which made the half-elf scratch his head in helplessness. Eve found William's reaction funny. She then reached out her 2 small hands to grab his hair and pulled on it. William ignored Eve's actions as he confronted his grandpa. "It is true that I won Brianna's hand in a duel, but I intend to pair her with Prince Ernest," William hurriedly explained because his Aunt Anna and Aunt Helen were looking at him with displeasure. He didn't want the two ladies, who had helped to raise him, to have any misunderstandings. He then glared at Brianna, who was hiding behind Wendy's back. I see. James played with his beard as he accepted William's explanation. Then how about the other two ladies whom I haven't seen before? What is your relationship with them? William felt relieved because his grandpa readily accepted his explanation. He then started to introduce the two new faces that accompanied him back to Lant. The beautiful lady with green hair is Lady Amelia Louise, William said. She is a permanent member of my own night squad. Louise? Is she perhaps the daughter of Philip? The Baron of Bradford? James inquired. Amelia, who was standing not far away from William, made a curtsy. It is an honor for Lord Ainsworth to know of our humble origins. James grinned as he waved his hand in a casual manner. Your father and I are not close, and we've only met twice in the past when I was passing through your barony. Even so, Philip is well known in the noble circle for not sticking his head in places that he shouldn't stick his head in. Your father is quite an admirable person. Amelia blushed at James' praise towards her father. She didn't expect that the hidden overlord of the West had met her father in the past. After that brief exchange, William then introduced the VIP guest that had accompanied him from the Kirinter Mountains. This beautiful lady here is the second princess of the Zealand dynasty, Ayla Sol Zealand, William announced. Her reason for coming here is due to the request of the Crown Prince, Alaric Sol Zealand. He also asked me to give this letter to you, Gramps. William took out the handwritten letter from his storage ring and presented it to his grandfather. James opened the letter and started to read. At first, there was a frown on his face, but his expression calmed down after he finished reading the letter. Ayla, was it? James asked in a friendly manner. From this day onwards, you will be a guest of our humble town of Lant. Although the amenities we have can't compare to the things inside the Zealand Royal Palace, they aren't too shabby either. Thank you, Lord James. Princess Ayla made a respectful curtsy towards the legendary figure that once visited their domain many years ago. I will be in your care from now on. James nodded his head. According to Alaric's letter, you are studying life magic, right? Yes, Lord Ainsworth. Do you have a master teaching you? No. James once again nodded his head. It's quite fortunate that we have a very capable life archon here in Lant. If you wish, I can introduce you to him and ask him to take you on as his disciple. Princess Ayla's eyes widened in shock. She didn't expect that this small town had a life archon in it. There was only one life archon in the southern continent, and that person had been shrouded in mystery. The only thing that the life mages of the southern continent knew about this legendary figure was that he liked beautiful young women and his stamina seemed endless. Lord Ainsworth, are you referring to the archon of the Spring of Life? Princess Ayla couldn't stop herself from trembling in excitement. Is he here? Is the renowned life archon, Sir Owen, here in Lant? Yes. James chuckled. Knowing that old man's taste, he would be more than happy to make you his disciple. William, who was listening to the side, had a dumbfounded expression on his face. He didn't expect that the old coot that boasted about his ability to go several rounds in bed was someone so famous. He even wondered if Princess Ayla was referring to someone else, and not the shameless and perverted old man, who had secretly told William several tips on how to make a woman feel good in bed. Chapter 262, Just wait, my beloved little pets. Just because you are a princess doesn't mean that I will treat you favorably. I am a very strict teacher, are you sure you want to become my apprentice? Yes. Please, make me your disciple, Lord Owen. Very well, Owen nodded in a righteous manner. The charisma that was oozing from his body was that of a master that had faced great battles and had lived to tell the tale. William couldn't stop his lips from twitching as he stood at the side, watching this master and disciple pair. He wanted to grab the old man and shake his body so badly while shouting, "Where is the real Owen? You imposter! Tell me, where did you hide that old pervert who only knows how to boast about how he mastered the 444 positions that would make a woman go crazy?" When he saw Princess Ayla kneel and pay her respects to her new master, William almost spat on the ground. The old pervert winked at him and gave him the "now you know how awesome I am" expression while Ayla wasn't looking at him. William's reply was simple. He gave Owen the middle finger. This brief exchange between the two came to an abrupt end when Princess Ayla raised her head to look at her new master. Owen extended his hand to hold her hand, which was the procedure of accepting a disciple among the life mages. Princess Ayla stood up with Owen's assistance, completing the ceremony of apprenticeship. "Rest for now," Owen said in a tone that was befitting of a monk that had abstained from worldly desires. "Our training will start tomorrow. I'll pick you up when the sun rises." "Yes, Master," Princess Ayla bowed respectfully before walking back towards the Ainsworth residence. William and Owen watched her retreating back in silence. The moment the girl disappeared from their sight, Owen's exalted form, and aura, disappeared completely. "Will, I'm going to tell this to you now, you'd better not extend your filthy hands onto my disciple," Owen said in disdain. "Excuse me? I'm not an old cow that preys on young grass. Just look at how handsome I am. Do I even need to put an effort into making the ladies fall in love with me?" William snorted. "Old man, you'd better behave and not do anything untowards to your new disciple, or else I'll tell your wife." Owen summoned his staff and immediately whacked William's head. Even though he had already mastered a lot of skills and had grown stronger over the years, Owen's strike cleanly landed on William's head, which made the boy cry out in pain. "Fool! Do not say such stupid things," Owen reprimanded. "Life mages don't do those things, especially between master and disciple. You'd better not spout any of that nonsense," especially in front of Ayla. You've finally shown your true colors, old man. William grumbled. What great archon? What legend? Patui. You're just a lecherous old man who likes to eat young grass. Owen was about to whack the boy again when the door of his house opened, revealing his young and beautiful wife, Sarah. Darling, lunch is ready, Sarah said with a smile. Little Will, it has been a while. Do you want to have lunch with us? William and Owen smiled as both of them patted each other like they were the best of friends. Sarah smiled sweetly at the two and was very happy that the boys were getting along. Thank you for the invitation, big sister Sarah, William replied. However, I have guests back at the residence and I need to entertain them. Perhaps next time. All right. Sarah nodded. Make sure to visit us again, Will, and study properly at the Royal Academy. I will, big sister. Darling, let's go and eat while the food is still warm. I'm coming, honey, Owen said. See you later, William. Bye-bye, Sir Owen. After the couple closed the door behind them, William shook his head helplessly as he walked back towards the residence. That old coot must have saved a planet in his past life to have Sarah as his wife, William thought. Then again, Princess Ayla becoming Owen's disciple is also a good thing. Grandpa and Owen are not fools. They will be able to monitor Princess Ayla and see if she has any hidden agendas in the Helan Kingdom. The group stayed the night in Lant before going back to the capital the next day. Although William could stay longer, he had many important matters to attend to. After 2 days of travel, they finally arrived at the capital and immediately headed towards the Royal Academy. 2 hours after arriving at the academy, William was summoned to the palace. He took Brianna with him, because he intended to discuss with the king about making Brianna the fiancée of Prince Ernest. Although there was no certainty that Great Chief Evander and his sons would be able to retain their position as the leader of the tribes, William thought that it would be best to officially declare Brianna as Prince Ernest's fiancée since the two kids seemed to have feelings for each other. 13 days. That was the amount of time that had passed since William had left the Royal Academy, and many things had happened while they were away. The academy was busy preparing for the inter-division battle, and all the divisions were training seriously for the chance to become this year's champion. Of course, aside from the students, Carter had also been very busy. With the help of Charlotte, and the children that had been affected by the suggestion spell, the Candies had made their way to the first, second, and third years of the magic division. He didn't dare try to ensnare the fourth years because there were strong individuals like Matthew and Leah who had very strong perceptions. Carter didn't want to jeopardize his plan, so he focused on these 3 divisions. Right now, he had successfully corrupted 70% of the student body and the rest would be fully under his control a few days before the inter-division battle started. So, Wendy and the Knight Commander have returned to the academy. Carter's face brightened when he heard Charlotte's report. He had been waiting a long time for Wendy's return and had prepared a special variety of candy just for her. This candy was more potent than the rest and it would only take 3 to 4 days for the spell to mature inside his target's body. Yes, Charlotte replied happily. Right now, Wendy is resting inside her room. Do you want me to give her the candy you specially made for her? Yes, please. Carter handed the pouch to Charlotte with a smile. I'm counting on you, my love. Carter drew Charlotte close and hugged her. This weekend, invite her to have lunch with you and bring her here, to my room. That will be when we will discuss our marriage and invite her to become my second wife. Sounds like a good plan, Charlotte nodded. She really wanted to have Wendy as Carter's second wife because she only wanted those who were close to her to share the love of her beloved man. Carter was planning to have a special time with her and Wendy on the day of the inter-division battles. All he needed to do was wait 2 more weeks before he could leave the southern continent. He would conduct a massacre, then take the talented girls of the Helan Royal Academy back to the demon continent. After that, he would receive the rewards that the demon lord promised him. Carter could feel the heat in his loins, but he endured it for now. He returned to his laboratory to make more candies. This was a crucial time, and he couldn't afford to keep thinking about the young beauties that would soon be brought back to the demon continent. Just wait, my beloved little pets, Carter mused. Soon, I will take all of you to the peak of pleasure and make you forget your lives in the southern continent. Chapter 263, William's Gamble. William was currently walking hand in hand with Brianna inside the palace. The little lowly was looking everywhere with an undisguised curiosity that would make anyone label her as a country bumpkin, but she didn't care because no one was around. The half-elf discovered that Brianna had an uncanny ability to change her expressions in less than a second the moment she sensed someone aside from those close to her. One moment she looked like an ignorant bumpkin, the next she looked like a dignified princess. William was quite impressed by the lowly's ability that he gave her 2 thumbs up in his heart. As they were about to reach the main hall where the king was waiting, they saw a young boy blocking their path. He tried to act calm on the surface, but his body language was saying otherwise. It was as if he wanted to run towards them, but his years of being trained as a member of the royal family prevented him from doing something unbecoming of a prince. Brianna clung to William's arm as the two neared the youngest prince of the Helan Kingdom, Prince Ernest. She had a smile on her face while looking at Prince Ernest. William, on the other hand, just played along with the adorable lowly because he, too, was interested in how the young prince would react. Sir William, I am here to congratulate you for a job well done in preventing the northern tribes from turning hostile on us, Prince Ernest said as soon as William stopped a few meters in front of him. My father is waiting at the Great Hall. Please, see him as soon as possible. I will look after Lady Brianna, while you make your report to my father. Brianna looked up at William with longing. Darling, don't take too long. I'm scared. Don't worry, honey, William replied as he patted Brianna's head. I won't be gone for long. It was then when Prince Ernest stepped forward and pried Brianna's hands off William's arm. He then pulled her away from the half-elf. The young prince hid the loli behind his back before glaring at William. Sir William, I know that the two of you are just acting, but let me say this here and now, Prince Ernest stated. Big sister Brianna is going to be my fiancée. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't make any further moves towards her. William looked at the little shrimp with amusement. Prince Ernest had a serious expression on his face, while the mischievous loli behind him was covering her lips as her body trembled. Clearly, she was doing her best not to laugh out loud. Your Highness, I won Brianna's hand in a fair duel, William said in a righteous manner. Her father has also given me his consent. What I do with her is none of your business. Sir William, your attempt to make me jealous is working. I would greatly appreciate it if we stopped this farce, right here, right now. Che, you're no fun. William crossed his arms over his chest with a smile. Although he wanted to tease the young prince a little more, he knew that now was not the time to do it. Big sister, please stop teasing me as well. Prince Ernest looked at the adorable girl behind him and pouted. Do you really enjoy seeing me suffer? Is it fun to bully me? Ah. Little Ernie, you've grown taller since the last time I saw you. Brianna gave Prince Ernest a hug before patting his head. Just a few more years and you'll be taller than me. When that happens, I'm afraid that the one to be bullied would be me. I will never bully you, big sister. You'd better not, or I'll run to Darling's side. Prince Ernest nodded his head seriously, which made William grin. Looks like Prince Ernest will be a henpecked prince in the future, William mused. Okay. I'll meet with the king first. Prince Ernest, please, entertain our northern princess. Prince Ernest smiled and pulled on Brianna's hand. Big sister, let's go to the garden. The flowers are in full bloom and you will definitely love them. Brianna waved her hand at William before allowing herself to be pulled away by a jealous Prince Ernest. The red-headed boy waved back at her before walking towards the great hall where the king was waiting for him. And that is how our northern expedition ended, Your Majesty. William finished his report and bowed towards King Noah. Noah nodded his head. I received Sir Jerkin's report yesterday, but I still wanted to hear your own version of the story. You did well and the merits you earned for our kingdom deserves a reward. The king of the Hellan kingdom secretly praised himself for sending the half-elf with his foreign ambassador to the northern regions. If it was only Sir Jerkins that had gone, then the northern tribes would have successfully allied with the two dynasties and pincered the Hellan kingdom from three sides. Because of this, he decided to give William a reward. As for what that reward was, he couldn't think of anything that the boy might like. This was why he decided to wait for William's visit to the palace and personally ask him the reward he wanted the most. William pondered for a bit. But right now, nothing came to mind, so he decided to put his reward on hold. Your Majesty, I can't think of anything right now, William said. For the time being, can you put my reward on hold? Understood. Noah smiled. When you finally know what you really want, come and find me. No matter how many years it takes, this promise of mine will still hold true. Thank you, Your Majesty. William bowed. After that brief exchange, William decided to discuss Brianna's matter with King Noah. He said that although Great Chief Evander and his family might not be able to retain their position after 4 years, the possibility still existed. Because of that, William insisted that Brianna be properly betrothed to Prince Ernest as his official fiancé. Surprisingly, King Noah didn't agree or disagree with William's suggestions. The only thing he promised was that he would see to it that the northern princess would be properly cared for in the palace. William sighed in his heart, but he knew that he couldn't be too pushy. He was about to ask for his leave when the king made a gesture for him to come closer. Sir William, there is something that I would like to entrust to you for the time being, King Noah said with a serious expression. The king then took out a sheathed dagger from his storage ring and handed it over to William. Hold on to this dagger for safekeeping, King Noah ordered. In any situation, you are not allowed to divulge to anyone, not even your family, that I gave you this dagger. Also, you will not hand this dagger over to anyone, regardless of who they are or whatever position they have. Do I make myself clear? As you command, Your Majesty, William replied as he took the sheathed dagger from the king's hand. After taking hold of the dagger, he immediately used his appraisal skill to get more information about the dagger that was entrusted to him. How come I can't read anything? William thought. I'll ask the system later. It would be disrespectful to investigate further in front of the king. William stored the dagger in his storage ring and took a step back. King Noah looked at him seriously before waving his hand. You may go. King Noah smiled. Please, do your best, and continue to protect our kingdom to the best of your abilities, Sir William. The Hellan kingdom is my homeland, William replied. I will do my best to meet your expectations, Your Majesty. After concluding his visit, William left the Great Hall and went to find Brianna in the garden. He explained that the little loli would be staying at the palace and be treated like a VIP guest. William also warned Prince Ernest that he should take care of Brianna or else he would take her away. Prince Ernest made a solemn promise that made William and Brianna pat his shoulders in admiration. After bidding goodbye to the young prince and the adorable loli, William headed towards the stables where the flying carriage was waiting for him. He was only 100 meters away from the stables when the system suddenly gave him an emergency report. Host. The spell that was dormant in Wendy's soul of consciousness has suddenly been strengthened. Right now, 60% of her sea of consciousness has been taken over. I estimate that before the day is over, it will reach up to 65% completion. What? William almost jumped off his feet at the sudden turn of events. He had only left the Royal Academy for 2 hours and, in that short amount of time, the corruption of Wendy's sea of consciousness had already advanced to such a degree. William couldn't believe it, and he found this a very hard thing to stomach. Tell me all the details, William ordered. Make sure to not leave anything out. Understood. When the host left for the royal palace, Wendy returned to her dormitory to rest. An hour later, she left her dormitory room and met Lady Charlotte in the hallways. Wendy's big sister then gave her a pouch filled with candies. Upon contact, I successfully placed a tracker on her and started monitoring her as well. Lady Charlotte returned to her own dormitory room to handle the affairs of the third-year magic division. Wendy, on the other hand, went to the host's dormitory room in the Solaris building. She went to find me. William thought. Continue the explanation. Seeing that the host is not inside the room, Wendy didn't go out. Instead, she laid on top of the host bed and began eating the candy. William clenched his fist so hard that his nails dug into his palm. How is she now? She is currently sleeping on the host's bed. William ran towards the stable in order to return to the Royal Academy as soon as possible. He wanted to be beside Wendy right now, and personally check her current condition. The half-elf knew that he was making a gamble with Wendy's life on the line and hated himself for it. If possible, he really wanted to kill the mastermind behind this whole incident and prevent the girl, who loved him so much, from suffering any harm. Chapter 264, Promises that he would no longer be able to keep. Half an hour earlier. It's so boring here in the academy, Wendy thought as she finished changing her clothes after taking a shower. I guess I'll just visit Will for now. I hope he's back from his meeting with the king. She had just left her room when she saw her big sister Charlotte walking in her direction with a big smile on her face. It's good to see that you are finally back. I missed you, Charlotte said as she gave Wendy a light hug. Where have you been? I missed you too, big sister, Wendy returned the hug as she replied to Charlotte's question. We went to the north to train. That's right, Sir William wanted to perfect our team formation so we had to leave the academy to train. Is that so? I hope that the Knight Commander isn't pushing you too hard. Charlotte frowned. Make sure to tell me if he bullies you. I don't care if he's the Knight Commander or not, I'll shove a fireball right up his *s. Wendy giggled when she imagined William holding onto his bum while running away in fear. Seeing that Wendy seemed to be fine, Charlotte remembered her reason for looking for her. Here you go, some candies for you. Charlotte handed the pouch filled with candies with a "be thankful I care for you" expression on her face. Thank you, big sister. Wendy happily took the pouch from Charlotte's hand. You're the best. You only say those words when I give you gifts. Well then, I have to go. There are still documents that I need to work on for the third years. I only came here to check up on you and see that you're in one piece. Thank you once again, big sister. I'll treat you to something good tomorrow. You'd better remember those words. Charlotte patted Wendy's head before going back to the third-year dormitory. Wendy was about to eat a candy when she suddenly remembered what had happened in William's room when she gave him a candy. Her face reddened as she reminisced about the passionate kisses that she had shared with him. I'd better give him some candies as well, Wendy thought. She was looking forward to another kissing session with William that would only become possible because of the candies that were in her possession. Wendy had been a regular visitor of the Solaris dormitory that the guards only nodded at her and allowed her to pass without question. They knew that the beautiful lady was a member of the Knight Commander's personal night squad and gave her the respect she deserved. William's room had a special enchantment in it that prevented anyone from entering without permission. Fortunately for Wendy, she was one of the few exceptions that could enter the room without using a key. He's still not here, Wendy thought as she scanned the room. It's fine. I'll just wait for him to arrive. The blonde beauty immediately headed towards William's bed and sat on top of it. She then opened the pouch of candies and started eating. I'll only eat half and share the rest with William, Wendy thought as she put a red-colored candy inside her mouth. This way, it's a win-win for both of us. After eating 8 candies, Wendy suddenly felt drowsy and slept on top of William's bed, while hugging William's pillow. Somewhere in Asgard. Captain, please wake up. We are being dispatched to the battlefield to collect the souls of warriors. We are the team that is currently on standby, so we have to hurry before our superiors deduct our wages. Just let me sleep for 5 more minutes. What are you talking about, Captain? A beautiful lady with dark brown hair raised her voice as she shook the sleeping beauty violently. If we don't go soon, Commander Gunner will deduct our wages. I plan to have a date with my boyfriend this month. I need to buy a new dress. You're so annoying. The sleeping beauty finally relented and propped herself up from the bed. Her long, silky, blonde hair shimmered briefly as the rays of the sun fell upon them. I'll be ready in 5 minutes. Wait for me outside. Understood. Please, hurry, Captain. Okay, stop nagging and just wait for me to finish changing my clothes. Sheesh. The blonde beauty, who seemed to be in her early 20s, walked up to her closet and began to put on her lightweight armor that was designed for the battlefield. After strapping on her protective gear, she walked towards the mirror in order to fix her hair. The image of a beautiful lady with long blonde hair and a pair of blue eyes, that were as clear as the skies of Asgard, were reflected in the mirror. She then began to comb her hair until she was satisfied with it. The blonde beauty then picked up the winged circlet lying on top of her table, and looked at the mirror one last time before going out of her room. As the captain of her squad, it was her duty to lead the other Valkyries on the battlefield to collect the souls of the brave warriors that had fallen in battle. An hour later, 12 Valkyries with their captain in the center descended towards Midgard where a battle had just ended. They had done this duty countless times before and they were already used to guiding the souls of the brave warriors to Valhalla. However, this time, the scene they encountered was different. There are no souls, one of the Valkyries, that were hovering above the dead bodies, stuttered. Captain Wendy. There are no souls on this battlefield, one of the Valkyries reported. It was as if they have vanished into thin air. This has never happened before. Calm down. Wendy raised her hand as her eyes scanned the bloody battlefield that was bereft of any signs of life. Go in teams of 2 and investigate. Maybe there are still lingering souls somewhere on this battlefield. We need to know what happened. Yes. Usually, hundreds, even thousands of souls, could be harvested on the battlefield where the fighting had just ended. Not all souls could go to Valhalla. Only those that fought bravely and for a righteous cause were invited to the great feast that the gods had prepared that watched over the 9 realms of Yggdrasil. The Valkyries investigated the battlefield in pairs, and just like Wendy mentioned, they did indeed find souls, but their number didn't even surpass 10. While the rest of the Valkyries were doing one last sweep of the battlefield, Wendy flew towards its center and saw a young man with arrows sticking out of his body and a bloody hole in his chest. Clearly, the young man was already dead, but Wendy couldn't help but admire the warrior because he was the only one in the battlefield that had remained standing even after he died. The young man had long silver hair that fell behind his shoulders. His face was stained with blood, but that didn't prevent his good looks from showing through. Wendy caressed the warrior's face, and felt a very subtle fluctuation in his body. Wendy immediately used her powers and coaxed the warrior's soul, that had refused to separate from its mortal vessel, out. I, Wendy, the Valkyrie captain of Lady Brunn have come to take you, oh brave warrior, to come with me and enter Valhalla, Wendy said in a respectful tone. This was an etiquette that the Valkyries had learned during their training when addressing the brave warriors that had died on the battlefield. Soon, the soul of a young warrior appeared before Wendy. According to her estimate, the young man was still in his late teens and hadn't even grown a beard, which was very uncommon among the warriors that had ascended to Valhalla. What is your name, brave warrior? Wendy asked. William, the young man answered. William Pendragon. Wendy extended her hand in a gesture of invitation. Come, brave William, Wendy said softly. The halls of Asgard are waiting for you. Your duty in the mortal world is over. Your duty to protect the 9 realms is about to begin. William looked at Wendy's delicate hand before reluctantly raising his own. The Valkyrie captain could see the unwillingness in his eyes. Those were the eyes of someone that still had unfinished business in the mortal realm. Wendy had seen these kinds of eyes many times in the past. However, she knew that the young warrior would gradually forget about his ties with the mortal world the moment he stepped into the halls of Asgard. The beautiful Valkyrie firmly gripped the young man's hand and flapped her wings to ascend to the sky. Soon, the other Valkyries joined her in flight as they took the surviving souls to their final destination. William glanced at Midgard one last time before he closed his eyes to weep. He still had promises to keep. Promises that he would no longer be able to keep. Chapter 265, A Farce with a Tragic Ending. Ha. Hat. Wendy mumbled in her sleep as she unconsciously tried to reach out for something. William, who sat beside the bedside, caught her hand and held it firmly. Perhaps feeling the familiar touch, a smile appeared on Wendy's face as she continued to sleep. You're such a handful, William said softly as he brushed away the strands of hair that blocked the sleeping girl's face. The spell inside her had finally stabilized. Right now, 65% of her sea of consciousness has been invaded. Understood. William sighed as the internal struggle in him waged on. After putting a tracker on Charlotte, the system had been monitoring her every move. However, she still hadn't met anyone that the system had deemed suspicious. Because of this, William still couldn't do anything aside from making sure that the girl that was holding his hand wouldn't suffer any harm. He had already steeled himself for this scenario, but when it actually happened, he still felt bitter in his heart. Minutes passed. Hours passed. After 3 hours, Wendy sleepily opened her eyes. She had a good dream, and it made her feel refreshed after waking up. The first thing she saw was a sleeping half-elf's face in front of her. It took a moment for the gears in Wendy's head to start churning. Half a minute later, her eyes widened when she found herself lying in the young man's embrace. Ironically, her hands were wrapped around William as if she was holding a hug pillow. The boy, on the other hand, had his arms wrapped around her in a protective embrace. Wendy didn't know what to do at the moment. A part of her wanted to stay in William's embrace and let this moment last a little while longer, while the other part of her wanted to plant a kiss on his lips. She was afraid that if she took the initiative to kiss William, the latter would wake up and the feeling of warmth and security she was experiencing would disappear. Fortunately, before she could finalize her decision, the boy's eyes opened. Blue eyes met green and the two stared at each other for a long time before William pulled her closer to him and planted a kiss on her forehead. Did you have a good rest? William asked. Although he tried to hide it, there was a tinge of worry in his voice. Yes, Wendy replied as she breathed in his scent. I always sleep well when you are around. Then sleep here with me tonight. The two embraced each other for a while before reluctantly separating. Well. Yes. I had a good dream, but I can't recall anything about it when I woke up, Wendy said while fixing her messy hair in front of the mirror. Even so, I have a feeling that you were in that dream as well. William crossed his arms over his chest and gave Wendy a smile. I don't know what your dream was about, but if I was in there then that means that it was an awesome dream. Although I can't recall much of my dream, I have a feeling that your expression in that dream of mine was a very sad one. It was as if you lost or had forgotten something very important. The smile on William's face stiffened when he heard Wendy's reply. It's just a dream, William said as he walked towards the girl who was currently fixing her hair in the mirror. William then gave her a light hug as he tried to bury the anxiousness he was feeling in his heart. Just a dream, so you don't have to think too much about it. Wendy replied as she placed her hand over William's. In the far east where the kingdom of Frisia was located. Sydney, the Hellan kingdom seems to be having some difficulties right now, the king of Frisia said with a serious expression. Because of this, I've decided to send you there as my envoy. Understood, the third princess of the kingdom of Frisia, Sydney, replied. Will I be going alone? No. You will be accompanied by 4 teams of aerial cavaliers. Also, I will give you full command over them. Do what you see fit in order to help our allies. We mustn't let the Hellan kingdom fall. The moment they fall, it will be our turn next. Don't worry, father, Sydney replied. I will support our allies to the best of my abilities. When will I be leaving? You will be leaving by midnight. Prepare the things that you need to bring. Don't forget to take your maidservants along with you. Understood. Be careful while I am away, father. The king of Frisia smiled, but he was standing at least 10 meters away from his daughter. Any closer would make it impossible for him to resist the effect of her powers. Princess Sydney, like always, was wearing a veil. Not only to hide her beauty, but to protect anyone from being ensnared by her powerful charm. No one is safe from it. Men, women, and even some beasts under the centennial rank, wouldn't be able to resist her. Although the king felt reluctant to let her leave the kingdom, his advisors had strongly suggested that they send her to the Hellan kingdom as his representative. This was a way to show their support, and help them understand that Frisia hadn't abandoned them. After Princess Sydney left the room, the king's expression became serious as he called upon his trusted subordinates to update him of the current movements of the 2 dynasties. This upcoming war made him feel anxious because the decisions of the 2 dynasties were too sudden. Although there was an unwritten rule between the 4 major powers in the southern continent that they wouldn't attack each other, no treaties had been signed to enforce it. This unwritten rule had lasted for a few hundred years, and Redmond Val Frisia, the current king of Frisia, thought that it would last for 100 more before the southern continent was once again embroiled in strife. His advisors had already mentioned that there was something fishy about this war, but their spies hadn't discovered any credible information about why the 2 dynasties suddenly made an alliance and teamed up to attack the Hellan kingdom. Naturally, King Redmond was aware of the series of unfortunate events that had happened to their staunch ally in the west. Even he thought that the back-to-back events seemed to have been planned by someone hidden in the shadows. The only thing we can do is prepare for war, King Redmond said softly as he stared towards the west. Since this war is already inevitable, I need to make sure that Frisia would not suffer too many casualties. King Redmond wanted to help the Hellan kingdom survive the storm that was slowly creeping on its borders, but they were just too far to offer any real assistance. All he could do was send his daughter, Princess Sydney, with their prided aerial cavaliers to at least tell King Noah that they were in this war together. I just hope that we are not being used as a chess piece by some higher power, King Redmond thought with a frown. Because if that is the case, then this whole farce will have a very tragic ending. Not only for the Hellan kingdom, but for everyone that lives in the southern continent. Princess Sydney walked towards her quarters with even steps. The maidservants following behind her had been unable to resist her charms and were now her loyal subordinates. If she wished for them to die, they would gladly stab their hearts in front of her with smiles on their faces. If Sydney wished it, she could easily bring down an entire nation on a whim. However, she didn't have any interest in dominion over the southern continent. What she wanted in life was very simple. To find someone that would make her understand the true meaning of love, which was something that was far beyond her reach. Chapter 266, Lost Memories. I knew that you would be here, Wendy said as she descended from the sky. The silver-haired young man didn't turn his head and continued to stare at the bridge that connected Asgard to the other realms of Yggdrasil. Listen, I know what you are thinking, but it's not going to happen. Wendy stood beside the warrior whom she had personally brought back from the battlefield a week ago. You can't return to Midgard. Just give up. William didn't say anything because he knew that she was right. He was already dead and it was impossible for him to return to Midgard. The young man knew this, but he was still unwilling to give up. Is there something you need to do? Wendy asked. Pass a message perhaps? If you ask nicely, I'll find a way to deliver your handwritten letter the next time I go to Midgard to gather the souls of warriors. This time, the young man finally had a reaction. He stared at Wendy intensely as he grabbed her arm. Can you really send a letter back? William asked. Will you do it? That will depend on my mood, Wendy replied with a smile. Also, it depends on the contents of the letter. Take note that coded messages are not allowed. If you play something fishy, I will personally hand you to Lady Freya to have your memories erased completely. The young man flinched when he heard Wendy's warning. He was planning to send a coded message to someone very important to him, but if the price was to have his memories erased then it would all be for naught. Wendy gave him the "I knew you'd do that" expression and pried away the hands that were holding onto her arm. The man snorted and walked away. Since his plan to send a message could no longer be achieved, he had to find another way to contact that person in Midgard. 3 months later, William thrust his spear and pierced the eye of an orc champion that was wreaking havoc on the battlefield. The monster screamed in pain and waved its giant axe at random in order to protect itself from further attacks. Finding a gap in the orc champion's attack, William charged in and slid between its legs. He then used his full strength to cut off its head from behind, ending its life and making its subordinates scatter in fear. The green fountain of blood rained upon the beheaded champion's surroundings, which made the warriors that accompanied William regain their morale and attack the orc champion's subordinates with renewed frenzy. Good job, Wendy landed beside William. With this, we have successfully defended this elven outpost. I'm sure that the lords of Alfheim will reward us generously. What's wrong? Wendy noticed that William was looking absent-mindedly at a dead elven warrior not far from him. Since this was an outpost that belonged to the elves, it was only natural that the ones protecting it were the elven warriors of Alfheim. Don't tell me that the standoffish William has suddenly awakened to necrophilia. Wendy asked in a teasing tone. She had already noticed that the elven warrior that had died was a woman and wondered why William was looking at her with such an intense gaze. Do I know any elves? William asked absent-mindedly. I can't remember anything, but for some reason looking at her is making me feel anxious. It's as if. The silver-haired warrior paused mid-sentence before holding his head as if he was suffering from a headache. The cleansing has already reached this stage, Wendy thought with a sad expression. He stopped going to the Bifrost Bridge 2 weeks ago and just stays within Valhalla to train every day. The so-called cleansing was the gradual loss of memory after a warrior had entered Asgard. Most warriors completely lose their memories within a month of their arrival, as they help the gods of Asgard safeguard the denizens of the other realms from invaders that were allied with Jotunheim and Muspelheim. Those who had broken free from the shackles of their past lives were baptized by the light of Yggdrasil and were born anew as an Einherjar. A/N, Einherjar means army of one, or those who fight alone. William was a very rare existence because he had held on this long and still kept a few of his memories intact. However, it wouldn't be long before those precious memories of his also vanished into thin air. When that day came, he, too, would be reborn as an Einherjar. Wendy had watched over the cold, yet brave warrior, who would always fight on the front lines in order to protect his comrades. She watched him save the weak and helpless from the monsters that invaded their lands without even thinking of his own safety. Part of her wanted to see William free from the shackles that hounded him, even in the afterlife. The other part of her wanted to preserve the memories of the brave warrior that had wormed himself into her heart. Let's go back, Will, Wendy said softly as he patted the warrior's shoulder. Let's go back to Asgard. William blinked and looked at her absent-mindedly. Soon, he nodded his head and accepted Wendy's invitation. The Valkyrie captain transformed into a Pegasus and allowed William to mount her. This was a special privilege to a select few. Usually, only those that a Valkyrie had chosen to become her life partner would gain this right. Naturally, William wasn't aware of this hidden rule among those that ferried the souls of brave warriors to the halls of Valhalla. He was busy trying to grasp the fleeting memories in his hands, before they too, disappeared for eternity. Inside William's quarters in the Solaris dormitory. Wendy opened her eyes and found herself inside William's room. She had been sleeping with him since the day they had returned from the north and rumors were starting to spread in the Marshal division that she was their commander's lover. To her surprise, William didn't deny or affirm the rumors. He simply brushed them aside as if they were something insignificant and not worth his attention. Wendy's twin, Spencer, was very vocal about it and would confront William from time to time. However, after William threatened that he would kick Spencer out of the Marshal division, the Siskin brother had no choice but to back off. William was not only the commander of the Night Order, but also the head prefect of the Marshal division. His words were law and no matter how aggrieved he was, Spencer wasn't able to do anything in front of William. Instead, he would often tell his sister that the half-elf was a wolf in sheep's clothing and if she wasn't careful, she would be eaten up in a heartbeat. Little did Spencer know that Wendy was looking forward to being eaten by William. It was quite unfortunate that, aside from simple hugs and kisses, William wouldn't do anything that was beyond his bottom line. Good morning, William said when he noticed that Wendy was already awake. I brought you some breakfast. William went early to the kitchen to smuggle breakfast for both of them. He had done this for the past few days, and Wendy loved these simple gestures that made her feel as if they were newlyweds. After eating breakfast, Wendy returned to the magic division because today was Saturday. It was also the day that she promised Charlotte that she would accompany her to train. Big sister, this is not the way to the training grounds, Wendy said after she noticed that they had left the premises of the magic division. There is a place that we need to visit first before we start our training, Charlotte replied with a smile. I need to meet the maker of those candies that you love so much. He said that he has finished making another batch and asked me to pick them up. Really? Wendy was pleasantly surprised by Charlotte's words. I've long wanted to meet the one who makes those delicious candies. Don't worry, now is a good opportunity to meet him, Charlotte patted Wendy's head. I'm sure that you will love him, too, Wendy. This way, the two of us can become his brides and live happily ever after. Charlotte guided Wendy towards the residences that were reserved for the teachers of the Royal Academy. The place where a certain candy maker was looking forward to her arrival. Chapter 267, I'm sorry. Are the rumors about you and Wendy true? EST asked as soon as William sat down inside the meeting room for the first-year representatives of the martial, magic, and spirit divisions. Priscilla, who accompanied William to this gathering, perked her ears up in order to listen to their conversation. The rumor about the half-elf commander and the beautiful lady that was part of his personal night squad had been circulating throughout the martial division. No one was brave enough to ask their commander whether it was true or not, for they didn't know how he would react to the question. Spencer had been a very good example of how William dealt with those who were trying to raise a ruckus. Wendy's twin was currently undergoing a mission to gather rare herbs that could be used to craft healing potions. This was the decree that William had given after Spencer confronted him about his relationship with his twin sister. After that incident, no one dared to talk about the rumors in William's presence. William propped his chin up using his hand and gave EST a smile. I didn't know that you like gossip. So, is it true or not? EST raised an eyebrow. He really wanted to know how far the two had gone in their relationship. No comment, William replied with a smug expression. Although he didn't mind admitting that he had already recognized Wendy as his lover, he still had to consider his grandfather's and Lawrence's faces. After all, Rebecca was still technically his fiancée, and he still had to deal with that issue before officially declaring his relationship with Wendy. EST scoffed while Ian looked at William in disdain. During the course of their journey in the Kirinter Mountains, William had shown through his actions how much he cared about Wendy. They were always holding each other's hands and they even slept together. It was more than enough evidence to tell that the two were already in a romantic relationship. Even so, Ian was unwilling to recognize it. He would rather turn a blind eye on the two's public display of affection than to hear William officially announce that he and Wendy were now a couple. The head prefect of the Spirit Division, Erwin Boaz, was the last one to arrive in the room, followed by his vice prefect. When all the leaders of the first-year divisions had gathered, the head instructors of the divisions, Grant, Layla, and Lords, started the meeting. In 2.5 weeks, the inter-division battle is going to begin, Grant said. We are waiting for a special guest to arrive from the Kingdom of Frisia, so the opening ceremony might be delayed a day or two. Grant then nodded to Lords, so that she could continue the explanation. We have already informed you of the rules of the competition, Lords stated. We will conduct a brief review to ensure that all of you are familiar with the rules. Lords then asked the head prefects to recite the main rules of the tournament to ensure that they had memorized them properly. After that, the meeting veered in the direction of how they would conduct the battles and the point system that they would be using for the event. The meeting only lasted an hour and the three instructors were satisfied because all the head prefects were very capable. All of you do your best, Grant smiled. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose. Just enjoy this event and hone your skills to fullest. All of you are now dismissed. The head and vice prefects bowed their heads respectfully to their instructors before leaving the conference room. It's finally over, William said after he stretched his arms and waist. I'm really not used to attending these kinds of meetings. Priscilla, have you covered everything? Yes, Sir William, Priscilla replied. Good. Please, make sure that everyone is informed about the topics that were discussed in the meeting. Understood. Priscilla gave William a brief nod before heading towards the Solaris dormitory. Deep inside she must really hate you, Ian commented with his arms crossed over his chest. You just shove your responsibilities onto her then lays around all day long. Do you really see it that way? William asked back. What do you mean? Ian frowned. Aren't you just dumping the workload on her? Of course not. This is what you call trust. Huh? Trust. Yes. Trust, William said with his chin raised in an arrogant manner. I trust Priscilla that she will be able to handle the job more effectively than I would. Since that is the case, why should I get in the way of her role? Ian scoffed at William's shameless way of sugarcoating his laziness. EST and Isaac who were standing beside the two sighed in helplessness. Ah, that reminds me, EST. William shifted his attention to his good friend. Have you thought about whether we should continue our bet or not? EST frowned, he had thought long and hard about his bet with William, and he was still on the fence whether he should agree or not. However, William's answer to his earlier question about his relationship with Wendy was brushed aside, so he was feeling irritated. Because of this, he decided to accept the half-elf's proposal and agreed to his bet. Let's do it, EST replied. I agree to the terms of our bet. Good. William chuckled as he extended his hand. May the best man win. EST firmly gripped William's hand and shook it. Suddenly, the smile on William's face vanished as a serious expression crossed over his face. What's wrong? You look like you've just swallowed a fly, EST teased the handsome half-elf that was looking at him as if William was seeing him for the first time. Host. ESTC of consciousness has been fully invaded by the Mindweaver spell. Put a tracker on him. Include all the add-ons, dot. Understood. William unconsciously tightened his grip on EST's hand as he did his best to control the rage that was building inside his heart. Too far. Whoever this person is has gone too far. William's breathing became heavy as he forced himself to calm down. EST was the very first friend he had made outside of Lant and he was very special to him. For his good friend to be under the subtle control of someone from the shadows pained his heart. I'm sorry, William said softly. This was the only thing he could do for his friend. He didn't know if the mastermind was alone, or he had many helpers in the background. Until he managed to capture their trails, he couldn't afford to dispel the Mindweaver spell inside EST's body. Doing so would only alert the mastermind because the spells were directly connected to their consciousness. Sorry? For what? EST asked. Don't tell me you're apologizing to me because you're confident that you'll be the one to win our bet? Will, you might be strong, but don't underestimate me. I will make you taste my true power when the two of us face off in the arena. William was about to say more, but his words stopped in his throat when the system gave him an emergency notification. Host. The spell inside Wendy's body is rising at an alarming rate. The invasion on her sea of consciousness has suddenly risen to 95%. She is now currently in a trance, and is now in the presence of someone who could potentially be the mastermind behind all of this. According to my estimate, it will only take 20 more minutes before her sea of consciousness has been taken over completely. Chapter 268, Would you like to kiss me? Disclaimer, if you are faint-hearted or someone that gets triggered easily, I strongly advise you that you read this chapter along with the chapter entitled Chapter 268, A Vessel That Held Limitless Possibilities. If the chapter I mentioned is not currently available, hold off in reading this chapter and wait until the next day. If you don't want to feel anxious and constipated for the remainder of the day, make sure to follow my advice. I don't want to hear any complaints, and people telling me that I didn't warn them beforehand. Read this chapter at your own risk. Half an hour earlier. Big sister, isn't this the area where the instructors have their own residences? That's right. Wait. You mean to say that the one who makes the candies is an instructor? Wendy asked in disbelief. That's right, Charlotte replied with a smile. And we have arrived at our destination. Wendy gazed at the small gate that led to a 3-story house. This house was located on the outskirts of the teachers' residences and no other houses were around it. Let's go inside, Charlotte said as she firmly held Wendy's hand and led her inside the gate. Big sister, can we really enter without permission? Wendy inquired. Charlotte chuckled and patted Wendy's head, you're such a worrywart. Of course, I have already gotten permission from the instructor. Just relax your little head and follow me. Wendy's big sister opened the front door and invited her in as if she was the owner of the place. Charlotte then guided her to the second floor where Carter's room was located. For some reason, Wendy suddenly felt a sense of anticipation in her heart. She thought that it was just her curiosity about finding out who the candy maker really was making her heart beat a little faster than normal. Charlotte then knocked on the door to announce their presence. Professor, it's me. Come in, a gentle voice replied from the other side of the door. Charlotte opened the door to the room and signaled for Wendy to enter before her. The latter obeyed her big sister's gesture and entered the room obediently. After Wendy had entered the room, Charlotte also stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She made sure to lock the door properly to ensure that no one would be leaving the room without Carter's permission. Wendy's gaze landed on a handsome man who seemed to be in his early 20s, seated on a chair with a book in hand. He seemed to be reading the book before they arrived and Wendy thought that the image of an esteemed scholar fit him perfectly. Allow me to do the introductions, Charlotte said with a smile. Wendy, this is Professor Carter. He is the magic teacher of the 3rd years that specializes in magic combat. He is also the maker of the candies that you love so much. Professor, this is Wendy Armstrong. Although we are not blood related, I treat her as my own little sister. I hope that the two of you get along well. It's a pleasure to meet you, Ms. Armstrong, Carter greeted as he stood up from his chair and gave Wendy a respectful bow. Wendy curtsied like a proper noble and returned Carter's greeting. The honor is mine, Professor Carter. It's a pleasure meeting the maker of those delicious candies. Are all of them really handmade? They are, Carter answered with pride. Charlotte has been telling me over and over again how beautiful and talented you are. Seeing you face to face, I have no choice but to agree with her words. Charlotte giggled as she walked towards Carter. You mean to say that you didn't believe the words I said, Professor? Charlotte playfully pounded Carter's shoulder and the latter only laughed. Seeing the two of them side by side made Wendy's heart beat faster. The scene reminded her of how she and William would normally interact when it was only the two of them inside his dormitory room. Ah! I almost forgot. Carter lightly tapped his head as if he had really forgotten something important. I just made a new product and I am looking for someone to do a taste test. Ms. Armstrong, are you willing to give it a try? Carter took something out from his pocket and unwrapped it. Inside was a red candy that was as dark as blood. Wendy swallowed unconsciously the moment her eyes landed on the candy. It was as if she had been unable to direct her gaze anywhere save on the crimson candy that lay harmlessly in the professor's palm. Carter smiled and lightly swung his hand to the left. Wendy's gaze followed the candy as if her eyes were stuck on it completely. The professor then walked towards the beautiful young lady and extended his hand. Do you want it? Carter inquired. Aye, Wendy stuttered. Carter was using the spell that was inside her body to control her emotions in a subtle manner. Do you want it? Carter repeated. I want, Wendy replied. Carter chuckled and glanced at Charlotte who was standing beside him. Feed this to your little sister, Carter ordered. He wanted Charlotte to personally do the act because it was more interesting that way. Charlotte obeyed and picked up the candy from the professor's palm and slowly approached the young lady who seemed to have lost her ability to think. Open your mouth, Charlotte ordered. Wendy obediently opened her mouth, which made Carter grin internally. Charlotte then softly pressed the candy against Wendy's lips and moved it ever so slowly, like she was applying lipstick on her luscious pink lips. After completing a full cycle, Wendy's big sister finally slid the candy inside Wendy's mouth and watched as the girl in front of her fell into a trance-like state. The candy dissolved the moment it entered Wendy's mouth. The sweet taste washed away all thoughts that she was currently thinking. Devoid of all thoughts, Wendy felt as if she was floating. She was like a painting that was slowly being stripped of her colors. Carter watched with a satisfied smile as he looked at the girl that was slowly succumbing to the power of his spell. Charlotte returned to his side and wrapped her arms around the professor, before kissing his lips. It was as if she wasn't the least bit worried about what was happening to Wendy, all she cared for was the love of the man whose hands were firmly grabbing her waist. It didn't take long before a sigh escaped Wendy's lips. She blinked once then twice as she looked at her big sister kissing the handsome professor in front of her. Her heart started to beat wildly inside her chest and a sudden heat washed over her body, making her face flush in embarrassment. What's wrong, is this your first time seeing a kiss? Carter asked. And no, Wendy stuttered. Oh. Carter raised an eyebrow. Then, have you kissed someone before? Yes. Who was it? Will, Wendy replied. The Knight Commander of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign. Ah, him, Carter smiled. He didn't mind Wendy having her first kiss stolen from her. What was important to him was the girl's chastity that was still intact. He even sneered at the Knight Commander for being too young and too naive to take advantage of the girl that was clearly infatuated with him. Carter's gaze, that was fixed on Wendy's face, slowly shifted downwards. It stopped on her ample chest for a brief moment, before continuing to move down her body. The professor gazed at that part as if his eyes could see past through Wendy's clothes and smiled. "How is the Knight Commander's kiss?" Carter asked. "Does it feel good?" Wendy could feel the warmth spreading into her entire body like an aphrodisiac as Carter empowered the spell that had almost taken over her sea of consciousness. "It feels good," Wendy replied as she once again fell into a trance. She couldn't take her eyes off the handsome professor in front of her. Wendy felt confused, but her thoughts were muddled right now. She couldn't think straight as the professor raised her chin with his fingertip. "Would you like to kiss me?" Carter inquired while strengthening his hold over Wendy's consciousness. Aye, Wendy's thoughts had turned completely blank. She couldn't muster any resistance to the spell that was urging her to say yes. Such sublime pleasure, Carter thought as he watched the internal struggle in Wendy's eyes. He then slowly lowered his head to taste the girl's luscious lips that were begging to be kissed. When the professor's lips were mere inches away from her own, the image of a red-headed boy appeared in Wendy's head. And no. Wendy hastily pushed Carter away and took a few steps back. Carter was surprised, but soon an evil smile appeared on his lips. It was as if Wendy's last-second struggle was turning him on. "No?" Carter asked. "No, what?" "Aye. Wendy stuttered, but the image of the boy inside her head suddenly disappeared when Carter fully activated the spell inside her sea of consciousness. Wendy's expression slackened as her beautiful blue eyes clouded over. Carter's smile widened as he neared the girl. His prey had already been cornered. All he needed to do was to reach out and make Wendy fall into the abyss of darkness. Chapter 269, A Vessel That Held Limitless Possibilities. Charlotte watched from the side as Carter reached out his hand towards her little sister. However, just as the professor was about to claim his prize, a sudden knock on the door of his room stopped him in his tracks. "This is the Knight Commander of the Angorian War Sovereign," a commanding voice sounded from outside the door. "There is an emergency situation and I am gathering the members of my Knight Order for a mission. I was told that my subordinate, Wendy Armstrong, was seen entering this house. I would like the residents to please cooperate with our Knight Order's mission." Carter frowned because he was once again foiled from having his way with the young noble lady in front of him. However, he was someone who knew when to step back in order to obtain the bigger picture. Wendy was already under his full control. The girl wouldn't be able to escape even if she wanted to. "I guess putting it off for later will make the main dish more delicious," Carter thought as he calmed the heat that was surging in his body. He took a step back and glanced at the door before looking back at the dazed girl in front of him. "Let's continue this later," Carter said softly. "Visit me tonight, here in my room. Do you understand?" "Yes," Wendy muttered absent-mindedly. Her clouded eyes slowly returned to normal. Wendy blinked as she looked at the professor in front of her and tilted her head in confusion. She couldn't remember what happened after the professor had asked her to taste the candy. The blonde beauty couldn't even remember if she had tasted the candy or not. About the candy." Wendy fidgeted. "You were asking me earlier to test it, right, Professor? Don't worry. You can come back later and taste as many as you want." Carter grinned as he crossed his arms over his chest. "Okay." Wendy smiled and nodded her head. Another knock was heard on the door as William's voice passed through Wendy's ears. "Wendy? Are you here?" William asked. "We have an emergency mission. I came to find you." Carter walked towards the door and opened it. He then came face to face with the boy who had prevented him from conquering his target. "I've long heard about the Knight Commander's fame, but I didn't have the opportunity to make your acquaintance." Carter extended his hand for a handshake. "I am Professor Carter Araceli, third-year magic instructor." William replied as he shook the professor's hand. "William von Ainsworth." Carter was about to say more when a faint fragrance, that came from the young boy's body, entered his nose. His pupils shrank in their sockets as he stared directly at the boy's chest. "Professor?" William asked. "Is there something wrong?" "And no," Carter stuttered. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Sir William." "Same here, Professor," William said as he waited for the professor to release his hand. For some reason Carter was holding his hand in a vice-like grip, unwilling to let it go. "Professor. You can let go of me now." As if awakening from his daze, Carter awkwardly released William's hand and scratched his cheeks. "I'm sorry. It was my first time shaking the hand of a Knight Commander and I lost my composure for a while." "I see." William nodded. "Professor, we really have an urgent mission. If you don't mind, can you tell me if my subordinate, Wendy, is here?" Hearing her name, Wendy opened the door wider and showed herself to William. "I'm here, Will. Let's go. We need to go on an emergency mission. Understood, Wendy replied. "Sorry, I have to go now, big sister, Professor Carter. Don't worry about me and do your job properly." Charlotte waved at her. "Be safe and may the gods watch over the two of you." Carter pressed his fist over his chest. "Thank you," William and Wendy said at the same time. Carter and Charlotte even walked the two of them to the front door and gave them one final wave of farewell before returning inside the house. "Professor, why don't we return to your room and continue where we left off?" Charlotte proposed in a seductive manner. "There's no need to rush, my love," Carter caressed the side of her face before giving her a kiss. "Handle your duties first and return here tonight. I suddenly remembered that I needed to do something important." A look of disappointment flashed over Charlotte's face, but she still accepted Carter's excuse. I will return tonight then. Good. I love you. I love you too, Professor. The two shared a passionate kiss before parting ways. Carter returned to his room in a hurry and closed the door behind him. His hand was trembling in excitement and there was a look of joy in his eyes. God's essence. That was definitely God's essence. Carter's eyes went bloodshot when he remembered the subtle power that pulsed within William's chest. To think that I would find someone with God's essence in this kingdom, and he seems to be completely oblivious of it. What a waste. Carter's handsome face contorted as he paced around his room. I can't be wrong. That is definitely the scent of God essence and it is stronger than the one that the princess possesses. In the past, he had encountered the same feeling when he was introduced to the princess of the demon race. The demon princess was hailed as one of the 7 deadly sins and the God essence inside her had the power to devour anything in existence. What should I do? Carter thought as he paced around the room. Should I report this? Carter immediately rejected this idea. Only a fool would report such a find to his superior and he was not stupid. Since he was the one who found it, he would claim it for himself and not share it with anyone. I need to rethink my strategy, Carter muttered. The current one is no good, wait. That girl Wendy is close to him. I can use her. This is perfect. Carter began to laugh as a plan started to form inside his head. Being a knight commander is far superior than being a talented instructor at the Royal Academy. I guess it's time to switch bodies again. The professor grinned evilly. He never thought that he would find the perfect vessel that held limitless possibilities in a kingdom that was assigned to him. Although he felt sorry for betraying his superior's orders, he was certain that once he got hold of William's body, no one in the world would be able to stop him. Chapter 270, Pain is temporary, but my fists are eternal. Where are we going? Wendy asked. What mission will we be doing this time? William didn't answer as he led Wendy through the Solaris dormitory. The students that saw them together immediately made themselves scarce because Williams was radiating a do not FCK with me right now B****'s aura. Wendy was oblivious of William's current expression because the red-headed boy was walking ahead of her. All she knew was that something was very different about the boy whom she had been with for the past few days. When the two finally arrived inside William's room, the red-headed boy turned around and hugged Wendy all of a sudden. The blonde beauty was caught by surprise because she didn't expect that William would suddenly hug her out of the blue. Also, the boy's body was trembling as if he was trying to hold himself back from doing something. Wendy instinctively hugged him back and caressed the back of his head. What's wrong? Did something happen? William didn't answer. Instead, he held her tighter. The scene where Carter almost kissed Wendy played over and over inside his head, and it made him feel like killing someone. He had used all of his willpower to stop himself from attacking the professor after he opened the door in his room. He knew that he still didn't know whether the professor was the true mastermind behind it all, or if he had acquaintances that were working with him inside the academy. All he knew was that he couldn't allow Wendy to be tainted by a man who would resort to such lengths to ensnare the girl that he wanted to protect. A girl that had found a place inside his heart. After calming down, William reluctantly took a step back and faced the worried-looking girl in front of him. Wendy, I want to give you something, William said as he took out a lollipop from his pocket. He removed its wrapping and presented it to the girl who loved to eat candies. This is my candy, William said. Try it. I'm sure that it tastes way better than all the candies that you have eaten in the past. Really? Wendy took the candy from William's hand and appraised it. This is the first time I've seen a candy like this. What is it called? It's called a lollipop. Pop. Yes. William nodded. Try it. Wendy smiled and placed the pink lollipop inside her mouth and started to lick it. It wasn't as sweet as the candy that the professor gave her, but there was an addicting taste to it that she couldn't explain. A few seconds later, she felt lightheaded, and leaned helplessly against William's body for support. Don't worry, William whispered in Wendy's ear. You're going to be fine now. Everything is going to be all right. The lollipop inside Wendy's mouth dissolved completely, and its divinity washed over Wendy's body like a gentle breeze. It felt so good that the girl sighed once before burying her head into William's chest to sleep. William sighed in relief as he gently lifted her body and carried her towards the bed, so that she could sleep more comfortably. After taking off her shoes, the red-headed boy sat beside Wendy and held her hand. He had already made his decision to remove the spell inside Wendy's body. He wouldn't allow Carter to use the Mindweaver spell to force her to do something that she didn't want to do. The scenes that the system had shared with him while he ran full speed towards Carter's residence made him want to murder Carter 1,000 times over. If he was only a few seconds late, Wendy might have already been. Killing intent rose within William's heart as his gaze sharpened like a blade. He had already considered Wendy his lover and he wouldn't allow Carter, or any man, to lay their hands on her. William wouldn't allow it. No matter who it was. Whether it was a teacher, a knight, a prince, or a king, he would kill anyone who tried to hurt Wendy. He didn't mind dirtying his hands as long as the people that were important to him lived happy and carefree lives. Soon, the killing intent receded as William got hold of his senses. The system was currently monitoring the changes in Wendy's body and her vital signs had already returned to normal. Host, the Mindweaver spell has been completely erased from Wendy's sea of consciousness. She is no longer under its effects. Also, with the power of the lollipop, she has gained a high resistance against charm spells that are not reinforced by divine powers. Thank you for the report, William replied. Did you succeed in planting the tracker on the professor's body when we shook hands? Yes. Currently, the professor is sitting in his room with his eyes closed. I assume that he is just meditating, or perhaps controlling those under the effect of the Mindweaver spell from his location. Continue to monitor him, William ordered. If he does something suspicious, let me know right away. Understood. Somewhere in Asgard. William, do you want to join my team? A beautiful Valkyrie with red hair asked with a smile. Your performance in the last battle against the orcs was amazing. I'd like to have a brave warrior like you on my team. I'm sorry, but I'm already a member of Captain Wendy's team, William replied. The Valkyrie chuckled as she leaned her voluptuous body over William's. I'm sure that I can give you more benefits than that tomboy could ever give you. If you like, I can even. Hold it right there, *TCH. An enraged Wendy stormed towards William and pushed the red-haired Valkyrie aside. How many times do I need to tell you, Hurya, that William is my teammate? Wendy asked with a glare. Stop poaching the warriors from our legion. Hurya crossed her arms over her chest and fearlessly returned Wendy's glare. I'm just giving William an option. I mean, warriors are allowed to go to another legion if they want to. You can't make them stay by force. This is the rule that Lady Freya has decreed, is it not? Yes. What you say is true, Wendy replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. However, blatant poaching of a warrior from another legion is not included in Lady Freya's decree. You are overstepping your bounds. If William wants to leave my legion, then I will allow it. What I will not allow is for you, or any of the other captains, to take him away by force. Silly Wendy, Hurya grinned. I'm not forcing anyone. Like I said, I am only giving William an option. I am not the first, nor will be the last to ask him to jump ship. Others have already done so before me, so it's only normal for me to join the trend as well. Hurya was stating a fact and Wendy couldn't refute it. Among the new warriors that were brought to Valhalla, William was simply too eye-catching. His silver hair, coupled with his handsome looks, already made him an eye candy to the ladies. However, aside from his good looks, he was also a strong and very capable warrior. A warrior who didn't shy away in the face of danger in order to protect his comrades and allow them time to escape from an enemy that was stronger than them. Valkyries may be warriors, but they were also maidens. They were constantly looking for a life partner that could protect their backs on the battlefield. Wendy understood this, and that's why she was always in the lookout for those who were bold enough to seduce William and whisk him away from her hold. Seeing that the look on Wendy's face was close to a breaking point, Hurya decided to take her leave. Although they were both Valkyries, Wendy was stronger than her. It could even be said that Wendy was among the top 3 strongest Valkyrie captains because she was blessed with superhuman strength. She could easily turn an orc warrior's head into meat paste with a single slap. This was why most Valkyries didn't want to get on her bad side. The only reason why they dared to was because of William. The silver-haired warrior was simply too irresistible for the Valkyrie captains to ignore. Take your time and think about it, William, Hurya said as wings sprouted behind her back. You are welcome in my legion anytime. After saying those words, Hurya flew towards the sky and gave William one last wink before flying away in the direction of her residence. Wendy looked at the retreating figure with disdain. She was so close to summoning her spear and turning the hateful Valkyrie captain into a skewered pig. William, Wendy said as she turned her head to look at the warrior who was looking at her with a calm expression. I have something to ask of you. William placed his hands behind his back as he stood straight like a sword. Is it another mission? I am ready to go anytime, Captain. Wendy chuckled. This was the sort of person William was. As long as it was a mission, he would do it in a serious manner that earned him the admiration and respect of warriors and Valkyries alike. And because of this, I can't allow others to have you, Wendy thought as she walked towards the warrior that she had personally taken from the battlefield of Midgard. She looked at his silver hair, his beautiful light green eyes, and his face that had made the ladies in Valhalla look at him like wolves finding their prey. William. Yes, Captain. Will you marry me? Excuse me. Wendy looked at the confused teenager with a smile on her face. Her hands wrapped around his body in a light embrace. It was loose enough to allow William to not get suffocated, but firm enough to prevent him from escaping. The tomboy Valkyrie captain under Gunr's legion had finally decided who her partner for life would be. She would not allow anyone to take her silver-haired warrior away from her, so she decided to marry him and stop anyone from making advances on him. Will you marry me? Wendy repeated. I swear that if you say no, I'll break all of your bones and drag you to Lady Freya's quarters. There, we would exchange our vows and become partners for life. Don't worry, I'll ask the goddess Amalthea to give me some of her golden apples to help your body heal after our wedding is done. Wendy narrowed her gaze as she looked straight into William's eyes. They were the eyes of a woman that wouldn't take no for an answer. So, are you going to say yes? Or must I drag you kicking and screaming like a little girl? The choice is yours to make. Also, remember this, William. Pain is temporary, but my fists are eternal. If you don't want to suffer eternal pain, you should already know what answer you are going to give me, yes. Chapter 271, A Night in Valhalla rated 18. Disclaimer, this chapter is R18. You already know the drill, wink wink. The sound of birds singing and water flowing from a small fountain reached William's ears as he found himself in an unfamiliar place. He didn't know how or when it happened, but he was now half submerged in what seemed to be a pool filled to the brim with spring water. The water was so clear that he could see the bottom without any problems. William scanned his surroundings to get an idea of where he was, but what he saw made his eyes widen in shock. A vast and beautiful valley, that was dyed in the red and yellow colors of autumn, appeared in front of his eyes. Several women with a pair of white wings behind their backs flew in the distance. They were wearing a type of armor that reminded William of the Valkyries in the games that he had played back on Earth. It was late in the afternoon and the sun was slowly descending in the west. He estimated that it was only an hour or two away from sunset. It didn't take long for him to realize that he was bathing in a pool that was on top of what seemed to be a mountain that overlooked everything around him. It felt so surreal, and luxurious, that the red-headed boy didn't know what to think. "Aren't you finished bathing yet, husband?" A bold voice filled with eager expectation sounded behind him. When William turned his head to look, he found himself staring at a beautiful lady who seemed to be in her early 20s looking at him with a satisfied smile. Her long blonde hair rested on her waist, while a pair of light blue eyes looked at him as if she was looking at the love of her life. The 4 pairs of wings behind her back flapped softly as she landed on the ground. William looked at the lady in front of him and recognized her instantly. Although she was a bit older, taller, and more curvy, there was no doubt in his mind that the girl he was staring at was his girlfriend, Wendy. Like the Valkyries he had seen earlier, Wendy was also wearing a set of revealing lightweight armor that made William wonder if it really offered any kind of protection. "What's wrong? Haven't you finished bathing?" Wendy inquired as she moved closer. "Ah. Maybe you are waiting for me to finish my duties, so that I can join you? As expected of my beloved. You really do love me." William didn't know how to react because things were happening way too fast for him to process. Before he could even reply to the lady in front of him, the latter had already removed her armor and waded into the pool towards him. Wendy?" William inquired. "You're Wendy, right?" "Of course, I'm Wendy." Wendy frowned. "What's wrong? Do you not even recognize your own wife?" Wendy had already arrived beside William and playfully caressed his chest. The moment her soft, delicate hands touched his skin, a surge of electric current passed through William's body. That was when he realized that there were a few things about his body that were different. He was a head taller than the lady in front of him, and his body was more muscular compared to his 14-year-old self. William grabbed his hair and found it long enough to rest on his shoulder. The surprising part about this was that the color of his hair was silver. He tried to reel in the surprise and confusion he was feeling and decided to ask the beautiful lady some questions. "Wendy, where are we?" William asked as he stopped Wendy's flirtatious hand from moving downwards. "Where are Priscilla, EST, and the others?" The air suddenly became tense as Wendy narrowed gaze. "Who is this Priscilla, EST, and the others you are talking about? Are you having an affair with the other Valkyries behind my back?" Wendy released a powerful pressure that descended on William like a mountain. The expression of the beautiful young lady suddenly changed into a warrior princess who had just caught her husband cheating on her. "Hey, why aren't you answering my questions?" Wendy asked as her hand gripped William's wrist. The sound of something breaking and the pain that followed after made the silver-haired young man wince in pain. Seeing his pained expression, Wendy immediately released her hold on his wrist and the tense atmosphere disappeared completely. Sorry," Wendy apologized as she cradled William's injured hand. "You know that I'm a very jealous person. You should know better than to mention the names of other girls in my presence." She then took out a small slice of apple from out of nowhere and made William eat it. "This apple came from the golden apples of the goddess Amalthea," Wendy explained. "It will heal most injuries, and we usually only use it when we are injured in battle. I only have 3 more slices, so you'd better not hurt yourself, okay?" William wanted to say that the one who hurt him was her, but he knew better than to argue with a lady who looked like the grown-up version of Wendy, but with a more brutal personality. A few seconds after eating the sliced apple, William's injury was healed completely. He moved his hand and arm and deemed that everything was working properly. Wendy simply watched from the side as if she was amused by William's actions. You said I am your husband, when did we get married?" William inquired. He needed to get more information about his wife and this world that felt familiar to him. "Has your head injury still not fully recovered?" Wendy asked back. "The healers said that some of your memories might have been affected because of your injury, but I didn't know that it was this serious." Wendy suddenly became anxious as she cupped William's face. "I'm sorry. I wasn't able to control my strength and pushed you away during our wedding night. I didn't expect that it would hurt so much after you put your..." Wendy gulped as she lowered her head to look at the little William that was currently poking her belly. William was secretly admonishing his little guy for getting excited without his permission. Even so, he kept a calm expression as he listened to Wendy's explanation. "I knew you were a true warrior when I brought your soul back from the battlefield. But, I never expected that you would be very manly down there as well." Wendy blushed as she averted her gaze. "We only got married 3 days ago, but because of your injury, I had no choice but to wait until you were fully healed to continue the consummation of our marriage. My senior said that since we have done it once already, it shouldn't hurt as much when we do it the second time. Don't worry, they gave me ropes that can withstand the strength of a Valkyrie. You can tie me up later, so I won't be able to hurt you again." William did his best to prevent his lips from twitching after hearing Wendy's explanation. He was still finding it hard to match the crude and bold lady in front of him from the delicate and straightforward girl who would instantly blush the moment he smiled at her. "So, we got married 3 days ago, but when I jammed it in during our honeymoon, she got hurt and gave me a serious head injury," William thought as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. "She also managed to acquire ropes so that I could tie her up to prevent me from getting hurt again. I didn't know that I'd be able to experience bondage play for the first time in my life in a dream." William looked at his wife and pulled her close to him. He then brushed her long, silky, blonde hair as he organized his thoughts. Wendy, on the other hand, closed her eyes and wrapped her arms around William's back. Their bodies pressed against each other, as the light of the sunset slowly disappeared on the horizon. Half an hour later, Wendy flew in the air holding William in a princess carry. She headed towards a residence that was located on the cliff of the mountain. The two of them had a light dinner and then the ever-excited wife half-dragged William towards the bedroom. Although William had no experience on how the deed was done, he had watched enough age to understand the basics, not to mention, a certain old man that specialized in stamina training taught him the tricks on how to make ladies feel good. I didn't think that Owen's 444 love-making techniques would be used in a dream, William mused as he tied the beautiful lady up, according to her wishes. Although he still didn't understand why he had suddenly appeared in Valhalla, he decided to go with the flow for now. After tying Wendy's arms and legs to the four corners of the bed, he kissed her forehead before looking straight into her eyes. "Are you sure you want to do this?" William asked. "You can still say no, and I will untie you right away." "You are my husband and I am your wife," Wendy answered. "I had to fight the other Valkyries to call dibs on you first, you know? It's your fault for standing out too much." "Will, I have been waiting for this day for months. Don't make me wait any longer, please." Seeing Wendy's pleading gaze, William finally let go of all inhibitions and kissed her lips passionately. He then moved downwards to kiss her neck, her collarbone and the two majestic peaks that stood proudly on her chest. William did his best to control his emotions and did his best to be gentle. At first, he thought that everything he was seeing was just a dream. But the pain he had felt when Wendy crushed his wrist was so real that he was finding it hard to treat everything like an illusion. Wendy's sighs of pleasure reverberated in the room and it made William breath ragged. He was only caressing her body, and yet, Wendy was already driving him crazy with her seductive voice filled with pleasure. In the end, he was unable to resist the urge and gave in to his instinct. He gently spread Wendy's legs as he prepared to finish what he had started. William gave her one last kiss on the lips before he lowered his hips and... Chapter 272, I can't believe we did 30 rounds. When William opened his eyes, something golden appeared in his line of sight. Soon, the sound of a soft and steady breath of a sleeper reached his ears. He was still not fully awake, but he did recognize the girl that was within his embrace. It was at that moment when images of passionate love-making filled his head. William's body stiffened and all the drowsiness that was still lingering in his body, disappeared completely. Slowly, but surely, William disentangled himself from the blonde beauty in his embrace. He then looked at Wendy with a serious expression and noticed a few things that made him sigh in relief. It was just a dream, William thought as he patted his chest in relief. Wendy was still wearing her school uniform, and her youthful face showed that she was still in her early teens. The red-headed boy wasn't able to stop himself from comparing the young and beautiful Wendy, to the curvaceous adult Wendy in his dreams. In a few years, she will definitely make the heads of every man turn towards her, William mused as he brushed away the lock of hair that had fallen over her sleeping face. He had turned the protection of his dormitory room to its highest setting which made it impossible for anyone to leave the room without his permission. William still remembered Carter's order to Wendy to meet him last night, so the half-elf locked her inside his room to prevent her from sneaking off towards the professor's residence. Although the system had said that the spell had been completely wiped away from her sea of consciousness, William didn't want to take any chances and took the matter into his own hands. He then asked the system to do one final check on Wendy's body to see if there were any anomalies. "Host, all the parameters on Wendy's body and sea of consciousness are all normal. There are no side effects from the Mindweaver spell and there is no chance for it to work on her in the future." "Good. Thank you." "You're welcome." After the system had made its report, William once again looked at the girl who was sleeping peacefully on his bed. Once again, he was reminded of the lovemaking that he had done with the adult Wendy in his dreams. "I can't believe we did 30 rounds," William covered his face that had turned red from embarrassment. "This won't do. I need to cool myself down." The half-elf left the bed and headed straight into the bathroom. For some reason, he could still feel the lingering warmth of Wendy's body and it was making his own body heat up. William was a healthy 14-year-old boy. Having that kind of dream, and waking to see himself embracing a beauty in his arms, it was impossible not to have any kind of reaction. Little William was already rearing his head as if he was prepared to fight for another 30 rounds. William didn't know if he should laugh or cry that his dependable junior had awoken its eagerness for a night battle. Soon, the sound of running water could be heard from the bathroom as William soaked his body with cold water. He hoped that it would be enough to drive away the sudden heat that had awakened inside of him after ascending the steps of adulthood, inside his dream. Wendy slowly opened her eyes the moment William entered the bathroom. It didn't take long before her entire face turned a shade of red as she recalled the dream she had. In her dream, she watched as her adult self and the silver-haired William made love to each other. "I can't believe they did it 30 times, Wendy thought as she rolled on top of the bed. It was her first time seeing the actual deed and it made her face blush in shame and embarrassment. After rolling for a few more times on top of the bed, the blonde beauty hugged William's pillow and wondered if the boy she liked would be able to accomplish the same feat that the silver-haired William had done in her dreams. She knew that William had no intention of doing those things to her at this point in time because they were still too young, but her heart wouldn't stop beating wildly inside her chest. Wendy didn't want to admit it, but she felt envious of the adult Wendy in her dreams. She looked so satisfied afterwards, Wendy thought with a reddened face. "I wonder if I'll have the same face after Will finally decides to embrace me." Inside Carter's room. Carter was finalizing the plan he had concocted after realizing the limitless potential that was hidden in William's body. His desire to obtain this new vessel made it become his top priority. After taking control of the Knight Commander's body, he would marry Wendy, Charlotte, Annie, and 2 more noble ladies in the Hellan Kingdom and build his influence. He would stage an act on the day of the Interdivision battle where he would die under the Knight Commander's hand. Carter needed to do this in order to fool the demon general that was his superior. He would then take his time to train his new abilities, as well as his brides, and slowly chip away at the power of the king of the Helan kingdom through schemes and deceit. Afterwards, he would stage a civil war, and crown himself the new king. Carter believed that it would only take him 10 years at most to put this new plan into motion. By then, he would have mastered the powers in William's body and taken over the entire southern continent. By then, he would no longer need to take orders from anyone. He would be the supreme ruler of the entire continent and everyone would bow under his feet. A few hours ago, he felt that the control he had over Wendy disappeared completely. It surprised him at first, but he soon accepted this outcome. For someone that had God essence inside his body, it was very possible for him to erase the spell that had been planted within Wendy's sea of consciousness. This discovery didn't make Carter feel anxious. There was no way for anyone to know that the spell originated from him. He had ensured that the spell couldn't be traced back to him. This was why he was confident that William wouldn't become suspicious of him. After his connection to Wendy was cut, Carter immediately formulated a new set of plans in his head. Although he would have to do it in a roundabout manner, he was confident that he would succeed in luring William to his location. He had many pawns in his hands, so he was not worried that he would run out of subordinates to carry out his orders. First, he would conduct a massacre in order to create a diversion. Then he would lure the boy to a safe location and deal with him there. He had done this countless times in the past, and he was confident that he would succeed this time as well. He had taken over the bodies of individuals far stronger than William, but he had never taken over a body with a god essence inside it. The thrill of conquest made him feel anxious and excited at the same time. Anxious because he didn't know what to expect, and excited because he was confident that even though there were unknown factors, he was still confident that he would be able to take over William's body using the methods he had developed over the years. William von Ainsworth, Carter thought. His eyes glinted in delight for the future that was laid out for him. Enjoy the last few days you have in this world. For they will soon come to an end. He was confident that with the preparations he had planned, William's body was already as good as his. Chapter 273, I knew that following him was not a mistake. Gained EXP points, 1000. Gained EXP points, 1000. Gained EXP points, 1000. Gained EXP points, 1000. William sat in a meditative position inside a spacious cavern at the Thousand Beast domain. This is where he had deposited the magic crystal cavern that he had acquired in the Kirinter Mountains, during their special mission. Not far from him, Dia, Thor, and Ragnar lay in a special nest where they slept peacefully. They were still in the midst of their hibernating period. The system told William that letting the three kids stay inside the magic crystal cavern would greatly help them with their growth. Since that was the case, William decided to let the three rest inside the cavern for the remainder of their hibernation. The other beasts within the domain also didn't want to miss out on this and gathered inside the cavern as well. The Kasaganaga, Fenrir, and the Trollhounds, the Blood Eagle, Cercopes monkeys, as well as the Ingreli birds were all inside the cavern to strengthen their bodies. All of them were magical beasts, so having a steady source of magic power was beneficial for all of them. Ella laid beside the nest of the three kids and looked at them with gentle eyes. She hoped that Dia, Thor, and Ragnar would soon awaken from their slumber and aid William in his undertakings. With the help of the magic crystals and the 3 centennial ants that it had eaten, the Kasaganaga's rank has increased to a Class B beast. It was currently the strongest creature that resided inside the Thousand Beast domain, followed by Fenrir and the Blood Eagle, Skadaray, who both became Class C beasts not long ago. The Trollhounds, Ingreli birds, and the Cercopes monkeys had also increased their ranks to the middle stages of Class D beasts. William was very satisfied with the rapid growth of his small legion that would become his main fighting force, aside from his Knight Order. Every time the half-elf visited the Thousand Beast domain to check on the kids, and his legion, he had spent an hour or two absorbing the magic essence in the air, to increase the level of his Ice Wizard job class. Gained EXP points, 1000. Gained EXP points, 1000. Gained EXP points, 1000. When he was inside the cavern, he would gain 1000 experience points every 5 minutes. With such an ideal place to cultivate, William wished that he could stay there for a long time. Sadly, he was too busy and could only stay for a few hours inside the domain every day. After exactly an hour, William stood up and left the cavern. Like always, he visited the different places inside his domain and consulted with the system about possible add-ons they could include after they gained more god points. Suddenly, William's body trembled and a searing pain spread across his chest. The pain was so intense that William felt that his chest was being ripped apart by an invisible force. System, what is happening? William asked through gritted teeth. Host, the seal on your magic powers is about to break. The pain you are feeling right now is due to the re-emergence of the magical power that had been suppressed for the last 5 years. William's eyes widened in shock when he heard the system's reply. Soon, the surprise was replaced by happiness, but the pain he was currently experiencing made it hard for him to laugh out loud. It was then when realized that the seal on his powers broke a few weeks earlier than he initially estimated. When he asked the system about this matter, the latter told him that it was due to the absorption of the dark energy from the twin dungeon cores, which sped up the seal's duration. As if waiting for that exact moment, a powerful shockwave pulsed around the half-elf as the shackles that bound his magic powers broke one by one. The ground froze solid and ice spikes protruded out from the ground as William's first magic-based job class, Ice Wizard, resurfaced. A blizzard suddenly appeared out of nowhere, covering his surroundings in a snowy haze. The sky of the Thousand Beast domain darkened as thick storm clouds covered the sun. Dark energy oozed out from William's body as the chains binding his dark magic broke apart as well. Thunder rumbled and lightning snaked across the heavens. Some lightning bolts descended into the dark blizzard that was rampaging on the ground. A few seconds later, a terrifying tornado of ice, darkness, and lightning spiraled towards the heavens. Kasaganaga opened its eyes after sensing the disturbance within the domain. It hurriedly ran outside the cavern to investigate when a white blur streaked past it. Ella had also felt that something was happening to William, so she decided to temporarily leave her wards as she went out to check on his condition. The other creatures, except the 3 hibernating beasts, also rushed out of the cavern to see what was going on. When they saw the giant tornado in the distance, they instinctively knew that William was at the center of it all. This. The Kasaganaga's mouth dropped open as it sensed the overwhelming magic power that was congregating in the location of the dark tornado. As a demigod, it had seen many things in its long life, but it had never seen someone wield so many powers inside their body. Aside from the prevalent ice, darkness, and lightning magic, Kasaganaga also felt several powers which belonged to fire, wind, earth, and water. What was surprising was that it also felt that there were other powers in the mix that were almost too subtle to notice. Can a half-elf really wield all of these powers inside his body? The Kasaganaga thought as it tried to understand what it was currently seeing. No. Even those bastard elves could only wield 3 kinds of powers at most, and they were among the races that are proficient in wielding magic and spirit powers. The deity of the sky shot down its initial assessment because William's current state was something that it had seen for the first time. After their talk during the battle at the Kirinter Mountains, the Kasaganaga understood that William wanted to visit the Silver Moon continent to see his mother and also find a way to save his father. Because of this, the two had come to an understanding that they were not enemies and could even cooperate with each other in order to return Kasaganaga to its former glory. This is also a good thing, the Kasaganaga mused. Currently, I don't have the power to drown those long-eared bastards to oblivion. However, having a strong ally would help me get stronger as well. While the Kasaganaga was deep in its thoughts, the denizens of the Thousand Beast domain looked at their master with awe and admiration. I knew that following him was not a mistake. Fenrir, the leader of the Trollhounds, looked at the violent tornado with happiness. After it received William's blessing, it became smarter and stronger than the average Trollhounds. After it hit rank C, it unlocked the ability to communicate with William and the other members of his king's legion via telepathy. Fenrir glanced at the other Trollhounds. Sensing their leader's gaze, the Trollhounds looked back at Fenrir with undisguised happiness. Grow strong, my brothers. Fenrir gave a low growl. Someday, our master will need our strength. We mustn't disappoint him. The Trollhounds howled in unison in reply to Fenrir's words. All of them vowed that they would become strong in order to fight by their leaders and master's side whenever their aid was needed. The Cercopes monkeys, who were usually rowdy, had quieted down. The same could be said for the Ingrati birds who liked to curse at others. Scotteret, the blood eagle, perched on top of the Hyperion tree as its bloody eyes locked onto the half-elf that was at the center of the tornado. Unlike the others, it was a creature that could see past through most things and focus its gaze on anything that had blood in it. William had promised it that he would supply it with beasts to eat in order for it to become stronger. So far, it had only preyed upon the goblins inside the goblin crypt. To be honest, it was growing tired of eating goblins. It hoped that in the future, William would be able to let it eat its fill of stronger and more powerful monsters outside the Thousand Beast domain. Half an hour later, the unprecedented phenomenon had ended. William stood with his eyes closed as orbs of power made up of ice, darkness, lightning, fire, wind, earth, and water, circled around his body. A ray of light fell from the sky, as the dark clouds parted. The golden radiance of the sun joined the other elements as they moved around William's body as if they were dancing. It was as if they were celebrating that they had regained their freedom and could once again aid the half-elf in the battles that he was about to face in the future. William opened his eyes as the flow of magic power circulated inside his body. Glacial Lance, William said softly. Although he could summon the lance with just a thought, he decided to voice it out loud in order to declare that he was once again able to use his magic powers. With a thought he shot it towards the sky, leaving a trail of white mist as it ascended into the heavens. William threw several more glacial lances in rapid succession as he once again tested the extent of his powers. The red-headed boy then bought a giant solid boulder from the god shop that cost 1 god point. He planned to use it for target practice to test his other powers. William pointed his finger at the boulder as his hand imitated that of a gun. Bang! William shouted as he shot a void arrow at the giant boulder. Although this skill's main purpose was to blind its target, it also dealt a bit of dark magic, making it a nice alternative to deal both status and damage to William's enemies. The black arrow hit the boulder and small shrapnels of rock burst from its body. Feeling like a child again, William fired void arrows using both hands like a gunslinger in one of the movies that he watched when he was still back on Earth. Seeing his playful attitude, the Kasaganaga decided to join in on the fun as it curled up into a ball and charged towards William's direction. Soon, the two engaged in a mock battle, sending spells flying in all directions. Ella shook her head as she watched the two children play their hearts out while they cursed at each other. It had been a while since she last saw William this happy. She hoped, more than anything else in the world, that the half-elf would continue to smile for more years to come. Chapter 274, The Meaning of Discretion. After having a fun spar with Kasaganaga, William exited the Thousand Beast domain. Ironically, the moment he left the domain, Wendy knocked on the door after finishing her morning lessons to ask him if he wanted to have lunch with her. William happily agreed to Wendy's proposal and went to the usual spot where they would always have a picnic together. When they arrived at their destination, EST and the twins were already there and had already spread out the food on the picnic blanket. The lovebirds have finally arrived, EST said in a sarcastic manner. Ian, prepare the melon seeds. I heard that half-elves love them. William smiled and sat down in front of EST, while Wendy sat beside him. I do love melon seeds. Ian, do you have some? My seeds are too good for you. Better find someone else's, Ian replied with a snort. Wendy lightly patted William's shoulder and whispered, I'll buy you some later. I didn't know you liked them. Thank you, William replied as he unconsciously kissed her forehead. EST and Ian stiffened because the half-elf didn't even try to hide their PDA in front of them. Isaac, who was watching from the side, lit a candle in his heart. He prayed for the half-elf's swift and painless death after his young master and twin brother had their way with him. The two of you should just get a room, EST said with a fed-up expression. Aren't you afraid that lightning will strike you down for acting lovey-dovey like this in public? For some reason, he couldn't stop the irritation that was slowly surfacing in his heart, from showing. William, on the other hand, smirked. He was not afraid of lightning falling down from the heavens. After all, his job class Prince of Thunder was not just for show. Calm down and cool yourself down. William grabbed the jug of fruit juice with a mischievous grin plastered on his face. Here, let me help you. Suddenly, the exterior of the jug was covered with a thin layer of ice. EST's, Ian's, Isaac's, and Wendy's eyes widened in shock as they looked at the frozen jug before shifting their attention to William. You recovered your magic power? EST inquired with a serious expression on his face. When did it return? To be honest, EST felt very guilty for the sacrifice that William had made in the trial of courage. He had long wanted to find a way to repay the half-elf for helping him clear the trial. His initial thoughts were to have him knighted and added to the Knight Order of Gladiolus. However, never in his wildest dreams did he consider that the half-elf would found his own Knight Order that was recognized by the king. Just an hour ago, William replied. It's quite unfortunate that I can't use it in the inter-division battles. I bet everyone's jaws would drop off if I start shooting ice shards in the middle of the fight. Wendy frowned as a sudden realization came to her mind. Since you have your magic back, shouldn't you be in the magic division as well? How about you tell the professors about a transfer? I'm sure Professor Layla would be extremely happy to have you. After their relationship had become more serious, William had also told her the story of how his powers were sealed. Back then, Wendy felt sad because if William hadn't lost his powers, he would be in the magic division with her. That's right. Ian seconded Wendy's claim. It is only right for you to be in the magic division since you have regained your powers. EST, however, shook his head. Although he could do that, he won't. Isn't that right, Will? William nodded to acknowledge EST's words. I will stay in the martial division, William replied. At least, until this school year ends. I still have a lot of things to do, and leaving the martial division at this time will lower their morale. I can't do that. Everyone quieted down after hearing William's reply. They knew about William's responsibility as the commander of the Anglo-Ryan War Sovereign. Right now, the half-elf was the pride of the martial division. If he suddenly switched to the magic division, they would be devastated. Let's not worry about this for now. William cleared his throat to change the topic. For now, you should just focus on thinking of ways to beat our lineup. Mind you, even if all the big shots among the first years were to band together, you guys won't get an easy win. Don't worry, EST commented in a calm manner. I'll make sure to beat you up in the arena. Oh, you sound confident. I wonder where that confidence of yours is coming from. Just you wait. I'll wipe that smug smile on your face and win the bet we have agreed upon. Wendy, who was eating from the side, raised her head to observe William's and EST's banter. Deep in her heart, she thanked the gods that EST was born as a boy. Her boyfriend and her head prefect get along so well that it would often make her jealous. Fortunately, head prefect is not a girl, Wendy thought. If he was, he would be a more dangerous love rival than Rebecca. After eating their lunch, Wendy, EST, and the twins returned to the magic division for their afternoon classes. The half-elf had already decided to skip classes for the day because he had more important things to do. I just hope he will believe me, William muttered as he walked towards the dean's office. Since the issue with Carter concerned the entire school, it would be appropriate to let Simon know about it before it was too late. Tell me, William, how did you come to know this information? Simon inquired. The elf looked at the red-headed boy with a serious expression. They were currently inside the dean's office and a powerful enchantment had been put in place to prevent eavesdroppers from getting wind of their conversation. I can't tell you how I got the information, William replied with a calm expression on his face. However, I can guarantee that this information is credible. Really? Simon narrowed his eyes as he stared at the youngest knight commander of the Helan Kingdom. Let me get this straight. You're saying that a professor is subtly taking control of the students inside the academy through the use of candies? Yes. Do you have any proof? I brought some candies with me, William said as he placed the pouch of candies that he had confiscated from Wendy on top of the table. Please, check them yourself, sir. Simon nodded and opened the pouch. He then took one candy from it and used his spirit power to give it a closer inspection. A minute later, the elf returned the candy inside the pouch and nodded his head. You're right, Simon commented. There is indeed a strand of spirit power embedded inside it. If not for my strong spiritual sense, I would have not discovered it. What are you going to do, sir? William asked. If this continues, I am afraid that more of the students might fall prey to this dangerous scheme. Simon took the candy pouch and stored it inside his storage ring. He then looked at William in contemplation as if weighing the words that he wanted to say. Rest assured, I will take precautions to handle this matter, Simon stated. For now, I want you to keep this secret to yourself in order to not alarm the mastermind behind this candy incident. Not a word to anyone, do you understand? We should be ready for the possibility that the professor doing this behind the scenes is able to tap into the memories of the people under their control. If word of this spreads, then our chances of capturing the mastermind will disappear completely. Who knows? He might also have acquaintances hiding in the background. For now, act as if nothing is wrong. Also, there's no need for you to look for me again if you discover something else. I have my own ways of monitoring the people inside my own backyard. William nodded his head. He felt a little relieved that Simon took his words seriously. In the beginning, he was afraid that the dean of the academy wouldn't believe him and might even accuse him of spreading fake news. Fortunately, that was not the case, and William left the dean's office feeling slightly better. With Simon's help, he was confident that they would be able to catch all those who were involved with Carter if the two of them worked together. A few minutes after William left the room, Simon sighed and knocked on the top of his table. You can come out now, Simon said. It seems that your young master is very able. To think that he managed to know about this scheme without any of you telling him is quite a feat. A black mist gathered in the center of the room. Soon, a man wearing a hooded black robe materialized in front of the dean of the academy. So far, everything is in order, Ezio replied. While the commander feels a little guilty in not telling young Master Matthew and young Master William about the details of our operation, it is for their own good. Also, it limits the person in the know, which would prevent the leakage in information. Are you sure that William will not tell anyone else about his discovery? He won't. The fact that he came to you with this secret is because he also understands the meaning of discretion. So, for his sake, and the sake of all the students in the academy, we mustn't fail. Failure is not an option, you also understand this, right? Simon sighed before nodding his head. In fact, he knew that Carter was only a pawn behind the candy incident, which was something that William was not aware of. Although the academy looked peaceful on the surface, there were many things being done behind the scenes in preparation for the battle that was about to come. Chapter 275, Will he be able to resist my charm? William was like an overprotective boyfriend as he accompanied Wendy wherever she went. This caused the rumors about the two of them to spread to the other divisions, and it made Wendy secretly happy. How could she not be happy? She could still remember the passionate words that William told her a day ago, which made her feel like she was on cloud 9. Wendy, will you be my girlfriend? William asked. Yes. Wendy replied in a heartbeat. She was afraid that if she was a second late in her reply, William would change his mind and tell her that he was just joking. This was why, when she confirmed that the handsome half-elf was serious about asking her out, she let go of all of her worries and kissed him passionately for 2 minutes. When their lips parted from each other, she buried her face into William's chest and hugged him tight. Is this a dream? Wendy asked anxiously. Am I dreaming? William gently patted the back of her head and assured her that she was not dreaming. All he asked of her was to keep their relationship a secret for the time being, because he didn't want to make things difficult for his grandpa, James, and the old fox, Lawrence. I'm sorry, William apologized. Although you are now my girlfriend, and I will do my best to always be by your side, I'm afraid that I can't declare it publicly. You already know that I still have an agreement with Rebecca, and I still need to give my grandpa and Sir Lawrence some face. I will only be able to give you hugs and kisses when the two of us are behind closed doors. I'm sorry if you find my affection for you lacking when both of us are in the outside world. Wendy kissed William's cheeks as she looked him in the eye to give her reply. I understand. However, you'd better make up for it when it's just the two of us, all right? Okay, William replied. Wendy fidgeted before asking the question that was nagging at her mind. She knew that nobles usually had many wives, and she was afraid to confront William about this matter in fear that he would think that she was a nosy lover. However, in order to prepare herself for the future, she still decided to ask to put her mind at ease. Will, how many wives do you plan to have? Promise me that you won't get angry at me if I give you my answer. How many? Wendy thought that William was going to say a dozen, because some nobles really did have a dozen wives and even secret mistresses that they hid in the shadows. She hoped that William wouldn't go that route because she knew that she was the very jealous type of girl. 9 wives, William said. 9 wives. Wendy gasped. Although the number of women her boyfriend planned to marry was many, it was still better than William having a dozen wives. Wendy grudgingly nodded her head before looking at William with a pout. Womanizer. Sorry. Will I be the first wife? Wendy asked. This was an important matter that she had to know. In every household, the position of first wife was important. It had the highest rank among the other wives, and the woman that held this rank was considered to be the groom's main wife. Yes, William said softly. You will be my first wife. Good. Wendy nodded her head and hugged William. Will, I love you. I love you too, Wendy. William kissed her forehead and held her tight. Now that he had already made his feelings known, his heart was finally at peace. If you don't look where you are going to trip, William reminded the daydreaming girl who seemed to have her head in the clouds as they walked towards the training area for their night order. Wendy looked left and right to ensure that no one was around them. After seeing that the coast was clear, she then moved close to William and whispered words of love in William's ears. The red-headed boy smiled and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek before arriving at their destination. Today was an important day because William planned to ensure that none of his members were going to be affected by the Mindweaver spell that was slowly spreading throughout the academy. Although he felt guilty, he didn't remove the spell inside Est's and Isaac's bodies. The system had already informed him that Carter had distinctly felt the loss of his connection to Wendy when William fed her his lollipop. He didn't want the latter to become more suspicious, so he refrained from openly targeting those that were still affected by the spell. William still didn't know the professor's motives and those of his acquaintances, if he had any, within the Royal Academy. Everyone line up. William ordered as soon as he arrived at the training grounds. Today, I will give all of you a special treat for all of your hard work. He then took out a few pouches from his storage ring and handed them to his officers. Each of you takes one lollipop, William said in a commanding tone. This is your reward for all of your hard work. Now, all of you eat it before we start today's training. Although everyone felt confused why their commander was suddenly distributing a snack for everyone, none of them complained. Each of them stuck the lollipops inside their mouths and began to eat it. The system had informed him ahead of time that there had been a few members of his Night Order that had been affected by the Mind Weaver spell. So, it's concentrated in the magic division, William thought. Affirmative. Fortunately, the 4th years seemed to be untouched by the effect of the Mind Weaver spell. It seems that Professor Carter has only targeted the first-year deletes up to the 3rd-year students of the magic division. William nodded in understanding. He thinks that those without magic power are useless, so he's left the martial division alone, William mused. Also, the spirit division has very strong awareness in their sea of consciousness. They would immediately detect a spell that tried to invade their minds, causing them to conduct an investigation. Although he was an enemy, William had to admire Carter's meticulous planning. Now, all that was left for him to do was uncover the professor's agenda. As long as he was able to know it, he would be able to stop it. William's gaze scanned the members of his Night Order with a serious expression. He wouldn't allow anyone to take control of the organization that he had built from scratch, for they were the sword and shield that would protect the Hellan Kingdom from those who wished to harm it. Meanwhile at the borders of the Hellan Kingdom, a legion of hippogriffs flew in a battle formation as they entered the borders of their allied kingdom. They had already been informed beforehand of the upcoming war between the Hellan Kingdom and the 2 dynasties that were just outside their borders. Because of this, they had been very vigilant during their travels and had been on high alert ever since. In the middle of the battle formation was a flying carriage pulled by a blade wyvern. This wyvern was a centennial beast and boasted incredibly high fighting abilities. Just like its name suggested, this wyvern specialized in physical combat and its whole body was as hard as adamantium. Its beak and wings were razor sharp and could easily split steel armor into 2. It was one of the protectors that ensured Princess Sidonie's safety from anyone who wished her harm. Inside the carriage, the 3rd Princess of Frisia glanced at the scenery outside the carriage window. She had visited the Hellan Kingdom a few years ago, and she found it to be a strong kingdom that equaled their own. Although she was not interested in politics, she still studied the history and current situation of the 3 kingdoms that were outside the borders of Frisia. Her reason for doing this was simple. She was looking for a candidate that might help her understand the true meaning of love. A love that was strong enough to overcome the power of seduction that had been with her from the day she was born. Currently, her followers had reported a few interesting individuals that appeared in the Hellan Kingdom. When she browsed the contents of the list, one particular name stood out from the rest. Name, William von Ainsworth. Race, half-elf. Age, 14. Magic power, none. Spiritual power, none. Physical fitness, A. Potential, A. Assessment overview, excellent physical prowess, but no magic power. Recommended to be placed under the martial class division. Currently the youngest knight commander in the history of the Hellan Kingdom. According to the reports, his fighting abilities are either at the peak of the silver rank, or in the initial stages of the gold rank. He wears a slave collar on his neck. There is no information on who his master is. Pros. A half-elf, so his looks are very pleasing to the eyes. Holds a high position due to being a knight commander of the Anglo-Rhine war sovereign. Cons. Has no magic power. Has no spirit power. Very narcissistic. He calls a goat his mama. A slave. A slave and a knight commander at the same time. Princess Sidonie mused. Now, this is something that I have to see for myself. I wonder, will he be able to resist my charm, or will he be like the rest that would happily kneel and kiss my feet with infatuated smiles on their faces? Chapter 276, Conquest of the Southern Continent. Silver Moon Continent. Finally, the time has come. A middle-aged elf looked at the elven battleships anchored at the port with his hands behind his back. Patriarch, the representatives of the Saleh, Nasir, Rees and Iroan clans have arrived. Good. Let's go. Yes, Patriarch. The middle-aged man met the representatives of the different clans at a villa overlooking the ocean. There, the teenage elves looked at the flagships that floated on the water with determined expressions on their faces. When the middle-aged elf arrived, all of them stood at attention and pressed their fists against their chests in greeting. All hail the great elder. Be at ease, let's start the meeting. The middle-aged man sat on a raised chair while the other elves sat on theirs. This is an important mission that I will be assigning to all of you, young prodigies of the proud elven clans of the Silver Moon Continent, the middle-aged man said in a confident tone. This mission will be dangerous, but the rewards are equally high. Everyone's gazes were locked on the middle-aged man's face as they digested every word that he said. The patriarchs of their respective clans didn't tell them anything. All they said was that the geniuses of their bloodline would undertake a mission for the glory of the entire elven race. The middle-aged man scanned the eager faces of the young elves and nodded with approval. Your mission is the conquest of the southern continent, the middle-aged man explained. Once you arrive there, you will find that the 4 kingdoms will be ripe for the picking. I want all of you, in the fastest possible time, to subjugate them in one fell swoop. The one that will oversee this mission will be my grandson, AUDIBLE. The middle-aged man made a gesture and a handsome elf with blonde hair and green eyes walked towards him. From all angles, AUDIBLE looked like a young man in his late teens. He was radiating a charm and charisma that made the young ladies among the elves look at him with great interest. As I mentioned earlier, he will be the commander of this operation. I expect all of you to obey his orders, for I believe that he is more than capable enough to lead all of you in this great undertaking. The middle-aged man continued his speech. The other clans are unaware of this mission, and I would like to keep it that way. Now, go. Capture the southern continent and make it the new territory of the elves. Gone are the days when our brethren are hunted down to be turned as slaves. It is now our time to turn humans into slaves. The elves will finally end our 100 years of silence and begin our conquest of the human lands. May the goddesses of the moon bless us all. May the goddesses of the moon bless us all. Central continent. A man with graying hair stood on top of a pyramid, overlooking the young warriors that had gathered from all over his empire. He had already been alerted that the war in the southern continent was about to begin, and it was now time to take a share of the conflict. His name was Leonidas, the great emperor of the Creator Empire. A force that not many dared to offend in the southern continent. It was well known for its military might that had brought many nations to their knees and made them part of its vast empire. Just like the 4 kingdoms of the southern continent, the Creator Empire was one of the 8 overlords of the central continent. Being one of the top 8 factions in a continent that was 20 times bigger than the southern continent, proved how formidable it was. Go with haste, and reach the shores of the southern continent in a month's time, the great emperor of the Creator Empire ordered. It's time to stake a claim on distant shores. Conquer them in the name of the Creator Empire. Capture those who submit and kill those who oppose us. All of you are the proud warriors of our empire. Glory to Creator! Glory to Creator! The young warriors raised their weapons in unison. Make my granddaughter the queen of the southern continent. Great Emperor Leonidas ordered. Let them know the might of our empire. Glory to Creator! Zagarl Ranath, the demon commander and Carter's direct superior, gathered his forces. Only 10 days remained before the inter-division battle in the Hellan Royal Academy was to occur. Carter's reports were very positive and it made him look forward to the great harvest that they would have in a few days' time. He was currently making his final preparations to bring back the broodmares that Carter had ensnared in the academy. Commander Zagarl wouldn't be participating in the retrieval operation, because he was guarding their borders against the persistent invasion from the Dark Elves who had, for some unknown reason, broken off their alliance. To this day, Commander Zagarl had no idea what the dark-skinned race was thinking. All he knew was that the other forces within the demon continent were also looking forward to the aftermath of the conflict between the two sides. Because of this, he had assigned his right hand to oversee the mission personally to ensure its success. Their plan was very simple. Enter the southern continent through the hidden teleport gate that they had built long ago, and connect to Carter's makeshift two-way dimensional gate within the academy. They would help Carter conduct a massacre, but their main role was to capture the young ladies to bring back the demon continent. It would be a blitzkrieg attack that would last for less than half an hour before they returned to the demon continent in haste. In order to facilitate the teleport gates, the demon race had prepared a tenth of the magic crystals that they had stored over the years. That was a lot of resources, so their mission mustn't fail at all cost. Aside from young ladies of the magic division, the demons would also capture the ladies from the spirit division. What the demon race needed were warriors that would be born with magic and spirit power. They already had strong bodies, so taking captives from the martial division would just be a waste of their time. 10,000 demon warriors. This was the number that Commander Zagarl had gathered for this massive undertaking. Their accomplices in the Hellan Kingdom would create a barrier around the academy to prevent reinforcements from getting in their way. Commander Zagarl was very confident with this plan, so he wasn't worried about the results. All that he was worried about was that the demon warriors would accidentally break the girls once they were brought back to their domain. Unlike demons, human women were more delicate and prone to injuries. This was why he had repeated over and over again that anyone who dared to indulge themselves during the mission would be killed on the spot. This was the only way to prevent the unnecessary loss of broodmares that would give birth to the next generation of demons that held powerful abilities. What he didn't know was that his trusted agent within the Royal Academy had had a change of heart and formulated his own plan as well. Although Carter still felt loyal to the demon race, the temptation of the divinity inside William's body was too much for him to ignore. Because of this, there would be slight deviations to the demonic invasion that Commander Zagarl thought was already in the bag. Chapter 277, Guests from the Kingdom of Phrygia Part 1. The Crown Prince of the Hellan Kingdom looked at the mirror with a serious expression. Behind him, several of his aides were holding different ceremonial clothes, all of which were made from the finest materials, and made by the best tailors of the kingdom. Those clothes look perfect on you, Your Highness, Prince Lionel's right-hand man said with admiration. Are you sure? Prince Lionel turned his head in an anxious manner. Will this really be good, or should I change clothes once again? Your Highness, believe me when I say that your clothes are perfect. There's no need to change anything. Prince Lionel's right-hand man was doing his best to keep the smile on his face from breaking. The prince had already spent 2 hours in front of the mirror to find the most appropriate clothes he could wear in order to receive the special guests that would be arriving in a few hours. The crown prince had always been confident in whatever he did. However, since the special guest that would be arriving was the love of his life, he wanted to look more presentable than he usually did in order to impress her. Just know that if you lied to me, I'll have your head cut off, Prince Lionel said in a serious manner. Do I make myself clear? Why yes, Your Highness, the man stuttered as he did his best to prevent his body from trembling all over. After looking at the mirror one last time, Prince Lionel left his room to join the delegation that would be welcoming the third princess of the Kingdom of Frisia into the Hellan Kingdom. Hey? We are to mobilize and escort a VIP guest that just arrived at our border. William asked with a frown. Can't the other knight commander do it in our place? We also have the Griffin Brigade. There's no need for my knight order to participate in this welcoming ceremony. Commander, this is an order from the king, the messenger from the castle stated. The Knight Order of Gladiolus is more of a land-based unit, they only have a handful flying mounts at their disposal. Also, the Griffin Brigade is the natural enemy of hippogriffs. We can't possibly send them because it might cause unnecessary conflicts between the magical beasts. William scratched his head because he had to admit that the messenger's words held some truth in them. In the end, he reluctantly agreed to the request and gathered the members of his knight order that were given flying mounts. Half an hour ago, the king gave me a direct order, William said as he faced his subordinates. The third princess of Frisia has already entered our airspace and has requested an escort from our kingdom. Because of this, we will be leaving in an hour to meet them. Make your last-minute preparations and meet me at the training field in less than an hour. Dismissed. The members of the Anglo-Rhine War Sovereign hurriedly went to their mounts that were currently staying at the special stables that were awarded to them by the Academy. All the magical beasts including the Griffin, Lionheart, and Conrad's Wyvern, were stationed there. Priscilla was surprised by William's announcement. Soon, a very sweet smile appeared on her face as she hurried back to the Solaris dormitory to prepare for the escort mission. What a pain, William said as he scratched his head. Don't be like that, Wendy commented from the side. Aren't you curious about the third princess of the Kingdom of Frisia? Many say that she is a peerless beauty. No matter how beautiful she is, I bet she won't be as beautiful as my master, William replied with confidence. I can't make a comeback if you put it that way. Wendy pouted. Indeed, Celine was very beautiful and, as a girl, Wendy felt inferior to her. However, William had already told Wendy many times that she didn't need to compare herself to other beautiful women. William would always say, for me, you are already very beautiful. That's why, you don't need to feel insecure in regards to others. Even my ex-fiancée, Rebecca, doesn't hold a candle against you. Although Rebecca was more beautiful than her, Wendy could genuinely feel that, for William, she was really more beautiful than Rebecca, which made the blonde beauty overcome some of her insecurities. However, when Wendy asked William what he thought of his master, Celine, the half-elf would suddenly have a devilish look on his face and simply answer. Someday, I will give my master a good spanking. That will be repayment for all the suffering I've experienced under her hand. Wendy tried to ask more about what these sufferings were, but William would silence her question with a hug, or a kiss. Clearly, the red-headed boy didn't want to share his experiences and Wendy decided not to pry any further. Less than an hour later, William and the rest of his knight order had gathered in the training field. William's personal flying carriage that held the insignia of the Anglo-Rhine Knight Order was also there for him to ride in. Like always, the one that would be pulling the carriage was Dave and his partner, Lionheart. This time, Priscilla summoned her alpha hippogriff and asked William to personally give her the honor of leading their knight order to meet their special guests. The half-elf readily agreed because he wasn't too interested in meeting the third princess of their allied kingdom. Commander, I can see them now, Dave reported. Carry on, William ordered. Wendy was currently taking a nap, with her head on his lap. William looked at the scenery outside of the flying carriage, while firmly holding the girl's waist so that she wouldn't fall off of the couch. Those accompanying him inside the carriage had already gotten used to the scene, and none of them said anything about it, including Ian, who was also looking outside the carriage window to prevent himself from feeling envious of the girl lying on William's lap. After the trial at the Peak of Enlightenment, Ian had unlocked the seal on his body to a certain extent that allowed him to harness the powers that had been sealed for just as long. He didn't say anything to EST and his brother because he was afraid that the two would get jealous of him. Still, what's the point of having this power if I can't use it out in the open? Ian thought as the entourage from the Kingdom of Frisia appeared in front of them. After sending their greeting, the members of the Anglo-Rhine War Sovereign spread out and joined the flying formation towards the capital of the Hellan Kingdom. The aerial cavaliers of the Kingdom of Frisia looked at these young knights with surprise and admiration. They could tell that their escorts were still teenagers and it made them feel very complicated, seeing them riding hippogriffs alongside them. In their kingdom, only those that had done great deeds for their homeland would gain the honor of riding on the backs of hippogriffs. These magical beasts were the main fighting force of their kingdom and not many were allowed to ride them willy-nilly. There was even a teenager that was riding on top of a wyvern. Looks like the second knight commander of the Hellan Kingdom is not just for show, the knight captain of the aerial cavaliers from the Kingdom of Frisia thought. It was not only him. Almost every one of his subordinates was thinking the same thing. How rude, one of Princess Sidonie's attendants, who was riding inside her flying carriage complained. Shouldn't that knight commander personally come to offer his greetings to our princess? How come he's staying inside his flying carriage and not even making his presence known? HMP. I guess being a knight commander and being a gentleman are two different things, another attendant complained. We came here to aid them in the war and yet they don't treat us like VIP guests. Princess Sidonie frowned when she heard her attendants, but she didn't say anything. Deep inside, she was looking forward to meeting the knight commander of the Anglo-Rhine War Sovereign. The reports she received about him were all very interesting, and she wanted to catch a glimpse of the narcissistic half-elf that was said to have hair that resembled a blazing fire. Unfortunately, the said half-elf had other things in his mind, and they were not even about the third princess. How come Carter still hasn't made a move in all this time? William thought. He clearly knows that Wendy had been freed from his control, so why isn't he sending Charlotte to investigate? Something doesn't feel right. The professor hasn't done anything suspicious as of late. Most of the time, he just stays inside his room meditating. He even stopped making those candies, and simply does his duty as the teacher of the academy. Perhaps he is waiting for something. What do you think? I don't have sufficient data to answer the host's question. William sighed internally. Carter's silence was making him feel anxious. It was as if there was a sharp guillotine that was hanging over his head, waiting for the right time to end his life. I hope that I'm just being too paranoid. William sighed in his heart. I have a nagging feeling that something very bad is going to happen inside the academy soon. Chapter 278, Guests from the Kingdom of Phrygia Part 2. Welcome, Princess Sidonie to the Hellan Kingdom, King Noah said with a smile the moment Princess Sidonie disembarked from her flying carriage. It is our pleasure to be here, Your Majesty, Princess Sidonie replied and did a curtsy. The silver veil that hid her face fluttered gently in the wind, but it still kept her face from being seen by anyone in the vicinity. Greetings, Princess, Prince Lionel bowed his head respectfully. He wasn't able to stop himself from making his presence known to the lady of his dreams. It has been a while since you've visited our kingdom. It would be my honor to be your tour guide during your stay in our humble kingdom. King Noah's face remained calm, but there was a slight hint of disapproval in his eyes. However, this disapproval didn't last long because Lionel's action was a normal thing for a prince of the kingdom to do. Thank you for your offer, Your Highness, Sidonie replied. However, the journey has been long and if possible, I want to rest for a few days before seeing the attractions of the Hellan Kingdom. I hope you don't mind my selfishness. Not at all, Princess. It was me who had forgotten how to be a good host. Please, allow me to escort you to your quarters, Prince Lionel bowed apologetically. This time, Princess Sidonie nodded her head and acted how a proper guest should act. King Noah nodded internally and didn't get in the way of Lionel's initiative. He was not stupid. With a single glance, he could tell that his son was smitten with the third princess of Phrygia. In fact, a year ago, he had asked him to play matchmaker and propose that Princess Sidonie be wed to him in a marriage alliance. The king of the Hellan Kingdom thought that this was a good idea, however, the recent events that had happened inside his kingdom had prevented him from putting this proposal into motion. Maybe this is a good opportunity for the two of them to get closer, Noah thought as he made a gesture for his aides to take care of the aerial knights from Phrygia. Since their purpose for coming was to be their reinforcements, King Noah prepared the best rooms for them as well as the best accommodations for their magical beasts. While his aides were busy guiding their guests, King Noah walked towards the flying carriage that belonged to his second knight commander, who hadn't even poked his head out to greet the princess of their allied kingdom. King Noah had conflicting feelings towards William because he was also someone that praised highly. As a father, he could see the signs that indicated that his son was very attached to the half-elf and hoped that it was just due to admiration. Commander, the king is making his way here, Dave reported. How can't he just leave me alone? William grumbled as he gently lifted Wendy's head from his lap and used a soft cushion as replacement to allow the sleeping beauty to continue sleeping. He then stepped out of the carriage to meet the king of the kingdom with a smile on his face. Greetings, Your Majesty, William said as he placed his right fist over his chest. I have accomplished the mission that you decreed upon me. You did well, Commander William, King Noah replied. I'm sorry for calling you out of the blue and asking you for an escort mission. I hope you don't mind the inconveniences I caused you. There was no inconvenience, Your Majesty, William replied with a smile. As long as it is for the kingdom, I will do my best to meet your expectations. King Noah eyed the young half-elf with a critical gaze. There had been many nobles that had voiced their criticism for allowing a slave to hold such a prestigious position as a knight commander within their kingdom. However, King Noah ignored them all because William had proven himself very capable for his age. He understood that the nobles were only whining because a slave suddenly held the authority to punish them if he found them guilty of a crime. This was a deterrence that knight commanders possessed and they were afraid that William would use his influence to bring them down. After the incident with Kingsley of the Misty Sect, the Rhodes family had been very low-key as of late. In the past, they had been very domineering since they were one of the dukedoms of the kingdom. All of that changed when William knocked the living lights out of Kingsley and made the Rhodes family more subservient to the orders of the king. Lord William, are you getting along with the head prefect of the magic division? King Noah inquired. Yes. The two of us get along very well, William replied. I treat him as a very close friend of mine. I see, King Noah remained calm on the surface, but deep inside he felt anxious. There have been rumors flying around that you are in a relationship with Miss Wendy, how much of that is true? William only smiled, but said nothing else. King Noah felt a headache incoming because he understood William's silence. As a king of the kingdom, he already knew how to read the unspoken words between a king and his retainer. William had silently admitted his relationship with Wendy, and King Noah didn't know how to feel about it. The only thing he could do was to pat William's shoulder and whisper something in his ears before walking back towards the palace. The half-elf looked at the king with a stiff smile on his face. He didn't understand what the king meant when he said the words. If you make her cry, I'll personally whip you 100 times. Finally, that nosy prince is gone. Princess Sidonie's attendant exclaimed the moment Prince Lionel left her room. The prince stayed for over an hour and chatted with Princess Sidonie about the current affairs in Phrygia. Prince Lionel had been sorely tempted to snatch the veil covering his beloved's face so he could admire her beauty up close. However, he didn't want the princess to hate him so he fought this impulse while keeping a smile plastered on his face. If not for Princess Sidonie hinting that she was very tired and wanted to rest, Prince Lionel might have stayed longer. Fortunately, the Crown Prince knew when to advance and retreat, so he decided to take a step back and allow the princess to finally rest. Before she left the kingdom of Frisia, the king gave her several powerful artifacts to suppress her powers. This allowed her to safely interact with King Noah and the rest of the representatives of the Helan kingdom. Still, she felt a certain dislike for the Crown Prince of the Helan kingdom. He was like the other men that had pursued her because they were charmed by her powers. If Princess Sidonie wanted to, she could make all of them do whatever she wanted, but she chose not to. However, there was someone that didn't like to live the life of a pacifist. Where's the fun in making ordinary men grovel at our feet? A voice sounded from inside Princess Sidonie's head. Sidonie, let's hurry to find a man that can awaken the power inside you. Don't forget our deal. 4 years from now, if you still haven't found the man that would make you know the meaning of love, you will switch places with me. I'll keep my promise. Why are you in a hurry, Morgana? It's because I don't want you to become a late bloomer. Is that the only reason? No. The real reason is because I am bored. Come on, why don't you swap with me for an hour or two? I promise I'll behave. Princess Sidonie sighed. She didn't know when or how it happened, but on her 10th birthday, a voice started speaking to her inside her head. This was also about the time that her powers had awakened and almost caused a disaster inside their kingdom. For Princess Sidonie, Morgana was an overprotective older sister that would nag at her whenever she acted timid in front of other people. Sometimes, Morgana would forcefully take over her body whenever she was in grave danger and protect her from harm. After living in the same body for many years, Princess Sidonie and Morgana had grown extremely close to each other. Sometimes, when Princess Sidonie didn't want to deal with other people, she would hide inside her sea of consciousness and allow Morgana to take over. Morgana also knew that Princess Sidonie was at the age where she would be interested in the opposite gender. However, the little girl was a romantic type. What she wanted was someone who could love her without being affected by her powers. Because of this, Morgana proposed that whenever Princess Sidonie found a candidate, Morgana would assess the man to see if he was worthy of her little sister. Princess Sidonie agreed to this condition because she knew that Morgana only wanted the best for her. Sadly, all the candidates that Princess Sidonie had chosen succumbed to her powers, even before Morgana could swap with her to assess them. Well, don't give up. We will be staying in this kingdom for some time. Maybe we can find someone among the good-looking guys here. Well, we still have 4 more years before our deadline ends, Princess Sidonie thought. For now, she decided to play along with her older sister and meet the candidates of the Helan kingdom that had been listed by her pets that were staying inside the Helan kingdom. Chapter 279, I hope that the two of you can meet soon. 3 days before the interdivision battle. Due to the arrival of the third princess of their allied kingdom, King Noah decided to hold a banquet for her and the knights that came to assist them in their time of need. Naturally, all the nobles headed to the capital in order to take part in the festivities. Ironically, all of the students of the Royal Academy were also asked to participate in this event, which made the students that were born commoners very happy. This was a very rare chance to see the nobles, and members of the royal family up close, not to mention, seeing the third princess of a neighboring kingdom in the flesh. Every student in the academy was excited, except one person. What a pain, William sighed after leaving the conference room of the academy. The half-elf had been suffering anxiety as of late because Carter hadn't been making any suspicious moves since he'd snatched Wendy out from under his nose. He was also feeling guilty about EST and Isaac who were still under the control of the Mindweaver spell. Because of this, he didn't hesitate to plant trackers on them as well, which cost him 3,000 God points. God points, 2,980. Although the God point expenditure was high, William didn't bat an eye and did it anyway. For him, EST and Isaac were more important than God points. There were times when he had to stop himself from giving them his lollipop in order for the spell to be broken completely, because he was afraid that if he continued, Carter would cease his activities altogether. William wanted to know the professor's goal and if he had other acquaintances that were helping him from the shadows. You have that sad expression on your face again. What's wrong? Wendy asked as she moved towards her boyfriend and gave him a hug. Are you worried about something? Yes, William replied as he hugged her tightly. I am feeling very anxious as of late. Not only that, I am also feeling guilty. Wendy hummed as she gently patted the back of William's head. After becoming William's not-so-secret girlfriend, the blonde beauty had gotten to know that her lover would tell her the things that he wanted her to know. Since William wasn't telling her the reason behind why he was feeling anxious and guilty, she knew that it was not because he didn't want to tell her, but he couldn't. Because of this, she didn't pry any further and just helped him to calm down. I love you, Wendy said as she kissed his lips. I love you too, William replied and kissed her back. Wendy had officially moved into William's room, bringing half of the clothes in her closet with her. Ever since she and William had dreamt about that passionate night in Valhalla, the two's relationship had become much closer than before. Ironically, they would often dream about the continuation of those dreams where the silver-haired William and the adult Wendy would go to the realms of Yggdrasil to protect them from invaders who wished to conquer them. Naturally, aside from fighting, the two would spend intimate moments together. These dreams would often make Wendy's face turn beet red each time she woke up before William, and saw him sleeping next to her. Of course, those intimate adult scenes were restricted to their dreams. William didn't do anything to her, aside from hugs and kisses when both of them were awake. Feeling better? Wendy asked. Much better, William smiled and kissed her forehead. The beautiful blonde then dragged William to the bed in order to talk about their plans for the banquet, which would be held tonight. I heard that the third princess is so beautiful that she has to cover her face with a veil, Wendy said like an auntie who liked gossip. I wonder if the rumors are true. If we go by the script, she would definitely be an earth-shaking beauty that would make all the men fall on their knees and beg for her good graces, William replied. Including you? Wendy inquired. I haven't seen her face, so I can't say for certain. However, there is one thing that I am sure of, William answered with a smug expression on her face. And that is, she will definitely fall in love with me. Wendy pouted and pinched William's waist. Instead of feeling pain, the half-elf just smiled and enjoyed Wendy's jealous action. You're so full of yourself, Wendy wrinkled her nose in annoyance. William pinched his lover's nose with a teasing smile. And that's the reason why you fell in love with me, right? HMP. Wendy pounded William's chest, and the latter only laughed as he caught her fists. The hours passed as the two prepared for the banquet. Although Wendy tried to hide it, she was looking forward to introducing William to her father in a discreet manner at the banquet. She had asked William if it was fine for her parents to know about their relationship. The half-elf had no qualms about informing Wendy's parents because he planned to take this relationship seriously. The only request was that it wouldn't be made public until after his duel with Rebecca was over. Wendy agreed to William's condition and silently apologized to Rebecca inside her heart. Although she knew that Rebecca and William didn't have any feelings for each other, she still felt like a thieving cat that got in the way of her good friend's love relationship. Beautiful, simply beautiful, William praised Wendy after he helped her put on her dress for the party. He was even the one who helped brush her hair and chose the accessories she was going to wear. The half-elf was almost half tempted to not let her go to the banquet and lock her up in his room to prevent other men from looking at her. I bet that you say that to all the girls, Wendy replied in a sarcastic manner, but deep inside she was very happy to be praised by William. Not to all the girls, William corrected her. I only say that to the girls close to my heart. Oh? Aside from me, who else do you call beautiful? My master and a black-haired beauty that is waiting for me to sweep her off her feet. Priscilla. Wendy raised an eyebrow as she looked at the handsome red-headed boy who was wearing the ceremonial black attire of the Anglo-Ryan war sovereign. Not her, William shook his head. Someone that holds my heart close to her chest and thinks about me every single day. What is her name? Belle. Wendy tilted her head as she tried to recall the names of the girls that were close to William. Her memory was good, so she easily concluded that she hadn't met the girl named Belle before in her life. Where is she? Wendy asked as she looked straight into William's light green eyes that reflected her image back to her. William sighed before answering Wendy's question. The short reunion with Belle was one of his most precious memories. In a place far from my reach, William answered with a sad expression. He then caressed the side of Wendy's face and looked at her with a serious expression. I hope that the two of you can meet soon. I wish for that as well. Shall we go now? Okay. Wendy nodded her head. William then bent his elbow in a gentlemanly manner to escort the beautiful lady outside the Solaris dormitory, where Dave was waiting for them. They were already an hour late for the party, but William didn't care. For him, this party was just a way to blow off steam and meet Wendy's parents. Although he couldn't publicly announce their relationship, that didn't mean that he wouldn't meet with his girlfriend's parents. William wanted them to know that he was serious in having a relationship with their daughter. Now, whether Wendy's parents would accept him or not, that could only be answered by Wendy's father, Joaquin Armstrong. Chapter 280, The Crown Prince's Jealousy. When they arrived at the banquet, the party was already in full swing. The performers took center stage at the center of the hall, and wowed the crowd with their amazing performances. The moment William's name was announced by the head butler of the palace, all eyes went towards the main entrance to see him. William walked confidently with Wendy by his side. The two of them looked like a perfect couple, which made the ladies and men sigh in admiration. Fortunately, Rebecca wasn't at the party because she had already traveled to the central continent to start her training at the Misty Sect. After their humiliating defeat, that was witnessed by the nobles of the kingdom, the representatives of the Misty Sect left in haste in order to save what little dignity they had left. Unfortunately, even though Rebecca wasn't at the party, Rebecca's grandfather, Lawrence, and her father, Duke Dillion, were there due to the king's summons. Duke Dillion hatefully glared at William, not because he was escorting Wendy at the party, but because he felt that he had been slapped in the face due to the Misty Sect's loss under William's hand. Lawrence, on the other hand, had a calm expression on his face. Originally he was thinking of having a one-on-one talk with William in regards to the rumors that were flying around about his relationship with Wendy. However, he could tell with a glance that the beautiful young lady and the half-elf did have feelings for each other. The old fox sighed in his heart because he knew that William also had his interest at heart since he had not declared their relationship officially. As long as the Knight Commander kept mum about his relationship with Wendy, even though their feelings for each other were obvious for everyone to see, no one could say anything unless William confirmed it himself. William's and Lawrence's gazes met and the two gave each other a brief nod before averting their gazes. It was an understanding between gentlemen, and Lawrence had no qualms with William having Wendy as his secret fiancée. At the table reserved for the special guests of the kingdom, Prince Lionel chatted with Princess Sidonie with a big smile on his face. The third princess did her duty as expected of a princess of a kingdom and tolerated Prince Lionel's mindless chatter. If not for Morgana telling her that the one she was waiting for had arrived, the princess might still be chatting with Prince Lionel about how the hippogriffs give birth to their young. Well, he is indeed a looker. Morgana's voice sounded like a purring cat as Princess Sidonie gazed at the handsome half-elf that had just arrived in the banquet hall. Seeing her attention was diverted from him, Prince Lionel frowned and followed her gaze. When he saw William and the beautiful blonde beauty accompanying him, the frown on the crown prince's face deepened. Of course, this only lasted for a brief moment before it returned to its usual calm expression. He is the youngest knight commander of our kingdom. Prince Lionel took the initiative to introduce William to Princess Sidonie. His name is William von Ainsworth. A country bumpkin and a slave who somehow managed to catch father's attention. Princess Sidonie didn't miss the contempt and ridicule in Prince Lionel's voice when he mentioned William's name. He must have done something exceptional if he was given the position of knight commander, Princess Sidonie said to test the waters in order to gain more information from Prince Lionel. If not, he wouldn't be given such an important role at such a young age. Prince Lionel chuckled as he reluctantly nodded his head. This is true. However, only my father knows about this exceptional merit that he did for the kingdom. Lord William was like a mushroom that suddenly popped out of the woodwork and surprised not only me, but all the nobles within our kingdom. Are you interested in him, princess? The question sounded so harmless, but there was slight tension in the air as Prince Lionel stared at the veil that was blocking his beloved's beautiful face. It is impossible for me not to be interested in such a young prodigy, Princess Sidonie replied. I would be extremely grateful if His Highness would introduce me to your knight commander. Of course, princess. Prince Lionel smiled and nodded his head. As the host, it is our duty to grant the wishes of our esteemed guest. Prince Lionel subtly clenched his fist under the table. His gaze landed on the smiling half-elf in the distance and wished that he could strangle him then and there. For William to be noticed by the lady of his dreams made Prince Lionel jealous beyond compare. He then organized his thoughts to think of a way to humiliate the commander of the Night Order in front of the princess. That is the only way he could calm the rage in his heart that was fanned by his jealousy. Naturally, Princess Sidonie and Morgana noticed the subtle changes in the Crown Prince's mannerism. Morgana giggled from within Princess Sidonie's sea of consciousness because she liked to drive the men around her a little sister crazy. If not for the fact that she really cared about her, she would have already taken over her body and brought the Hellan kingdom to her knees. Sadly, she couldn't do that. For the time wasn't ripe. Princess Sidonie's full power would only be unlocked the day she came of age, and that was still 2 years away from happening. For now, she decided to just let nature take its course, as Princess Sidonie enjoyed her teenage years under her protection. William, who was completely oblivious of the Crown Prince's jealousy, walked towards the tables that were designated for their night order. He was doing his best not to glance in Carter's direction, who was seated among the staff of the Royal Academy. The professor had finally broken his isolation and participated in the banquet for the guests of their kingdom. Since his senses were honed in the professor's direction, he felt Carter's stare directed at him and Wendy. William didn't know what the professor was thinking at this point in time because the system was not omnipotent enough to do that. It could only monitor what Carter saw, heard, and the fluctuation of his emotions. Right now, Carter was eyeing William like a wolf that had found its prey. He was observing the boy's expression in every gesture and imprinting them into his subconscious mind. That way, when he finally took control of William's body, he would be able to act the way he did and fool everyone around him. 3 more days, Carter thought. 3 more days and I will have a new vessel. If possible, Carter wished that the days would pass quickly, so that the day of the interdivision battle would arrive sooner. The plan that he had painstakingly concocted from the shadows had already been laid out. He had already placed a subtle command on those that were under his spell, and it would activate on the day of the welcoming ceremony. Carter's plan was really simple. Use the people that were close to William as the knife that would stab him from the back, and force him to make a difficult choice. A choice that would make the half-elf regret that he didn't kill Carter sooner.